But let me tell you, this isn't just another conference. Beat 2025 is a movement.
You see, this is a movement. Why we call this so? Because this is a gathering of young minds, it's a gathering of cardiologists, it's a gathering of industry specialists, it's the gathering of people who truly have their hand on the pulse. So, this is going to be an incredible one.
Definitely. And this aims to protect the heart of India because let's face, heart disease today is more than just a medical issue. It is a national concern. And Kanishk, do you know that Indians are experiencing heart attack 10 years earlier than most Western countries? And 1 in 3 adults of over 30 has hypertension in our country.
My God. And most importantly, many of us are probably not addressing it. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is a gap that we are going to be filling today. So it is incredibly important that each one of us is well aware of what we are going to be talking and taking further from here.
Sure. So this complete day is packed with innovation in cardiac care, AI in diagnostic breakthroughs, public health strategies, and very much thought-provoking discussions on how to build a heart-healthy India. But before we proceed, it's time to our partners. Without them, this Beat 2025 would not be possible. So a huge thank you to our powered by partner Narayana Health.
We of course request you to put in your hands together for our associate partner, India Hypertension Control Initiative, for the session partner, Novartis Novo Nordisk Bristol Myers Squibb,
Industry partner Polycure, exhibit partners Altus Airflow, Medikarma,
and our academic partner, Jamia Hamdard University. Could we give a round of applause to everybody? Thank you very much.
and now to officially dive into the day, let's take a moment to reflect on the heartbeat behind it all. The story of Voice of Healthcare, from sparking important conversation to building future-ready patient-first healthcare ecosystem. Voice of Healthcare continues to build the voice that unites India's healthcare community. So let's turn our attention to screen for a short video that captures the mission, milestone, and heartbeat of Voice of Healthcare.
I think that deserves a round of applause. What a powerful work Voice of Healthcare is doing to be a true voice of the entire healthcare fraternity put together. But I think this is the perfect opportunity for us to begin today's event with a little traditional touch and an lamplighting ceremony. It is our pleasure to invite extremely glorified dignitaries that we are wishing to invite on stage for the lamplighting ceremony to begin with today.
I would like to invite Dr. Naveen Nishal for lamp lighting. Dr. Naresh Trehan. Dr. Sandeep Bansal, Dr. Tina Rawal, Dr. Ganesh Kumar, Mr. Sudhir Malhotra.
This lamp lighting ceremony is truly a symbol of knowledge, purity, a new beginning. And of course, it is a moment for us to celebrate the spirit of Voice of Healthcare as we get together to bring in a very pure message to all of us. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you so much. We can always give it a round of applause whenever we wish to. You see, applauding is also great for our heart health, right? I mean, it gives us more energy, gives it a little blood pressure. So please do not refrain yourself from doing this. We want to make this a little more merrier as well today. So with this, let's get going.
Yes, and now, ladies and gentlemen, it is time to set the heart for this summit in motion. To open today's proceeding, we have the visionary who dreamt Beat into being a healthcare reformist, an entrepreneur, and a change maker whose ideas continue to shape India's medical future. Please put your hands together and join me in welcoming Dr. Naveen Nishchal, founder, Voice of Healthcare, and co-founder, Cygnus Hospital and Metadoxper, to deliver the opening address at Beat 2025.
Thank you very much, Kanishka and Sambal. Respected Dr. Trehan, Dr. Naresh Trehan, Dr. Ganesh Kumar, Dr. Sandeep Bansal, Dr. Tina Rawal, all cardiologists, surgeons, researchers, policymakers, industry leaders, and friends. A very warm welcome on behalf of Voice of Healthcare for BEAT 2025 National Cardiovascular Summit and Awards. We are here because the number one killer of our time is not a virus or a rare disorder. It is a cardiovascular disease. It steals life quietly, often suddenly, and it affects every family, every city, every village. Heart attacks in 30s and 40s are very common these days. If I speak about total cardiovascular disease burden of the country, it's huge. I believe more than 6 crore, 60 million people are living with CVD in our country. And every year, more than 30 lakhs people die because of cardiovascular diseases. Are we able to save each and every patient suffering with myocardial infarction? Even if a doctor sitting in tier 2, tier 3 town or a smaller town makes the right diagnosis of ST elevation MI, can we save myocardium of that patient? No, we can't save those patients. Even today, a lot of patients, they are traveling from smaller towns to larger cities for angiography, angioplasty, all sort of cardiac procedures. India is a very large country. We have around 750 district towns and 7,000 small towns. How many district towns have functional cath lab in India out of 750? Not more than 250 towns. And there are 500 cities, district towns, and then smaller towns, more than 5,000 smaller towns. where doctors are making right diagnosis of myocardial infarction, and every time they see an ECG, they refer those patients to larger cities like Delhi, Bangalore, Chennai, Kolkata. So we have to work on two fronts. Number one is we have to focus on preventive measure, right from lifestyle changes, nutrition, exercise, etc. And now we are living in the era of artificial intelligence. We have genomics, precision medicine. We can adopt these techniques to help prevent cardiac diseases. Secondly, I believe that we have to heavily invest in capacity building, especially in district towns, smaller towns, where there is no cath lab. During my entrepreneurial journey, I set up 10 hospitals and I set up 8 cath labs in different cities of this country. I think together we have to make a mission where we can work around accessibility, affordability, and quality of cardiac care. Today, we have with us everyone who can make a real difference, from policymakers to doctors to academicians and public health experts. With this summit, I urge all of you to collaborate and help in building capacities to treat increasing CVD burden and educate general population in prevention. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mitchell, for truly setting the tone. It is, of course, a synopsis of what to expect during the day. But now, let us kickstart, ladies and gentlemen. And as we start, we want to bring in the first highlight of the day for all of you right here. The man that I'm inviting on stage is not just a visionary surgeon, he's almost an institution in himself, and he's also a builder of these institutions. He's one of India's biggest medical icons, if I could safely say that. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure as I invite on stage Dr. Naresh Trehan, Chairman and Managing Director for Vedanta of Medicity, as a very, very special guest speaker for the day. And thank you very much, sir, for taking out time from your extremely busy schedule, which we're all aware of, and being here with us. Dr. Trehan. All right. So, yeah, so if I could also now invite Dr. Naveen Nishal to please join us for an extremely powerful fireside chat with Dr. Trehan, ladies and gentlemen. And we are sure that this conversation is going to be the highlight of the day that each one of you is looking forward and waiting. So, Dr. Nishal, if I could please invite you to join me.
Thank you once again, Ganesh. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
How are you doing today?
Good. Now that I'm here, but I was woken up by a very rude shock this morning. 7 o'clock, a very close friend of mine who was running the marathon.
Yeah, this
There's a
morning,
half
morning,
marathon this morning.
happened. Yeah.
10 yards from finish line, he collapsed.
Oh,
Cardiac arrest. Fortunately, the stadium had a resuscitation facility. We moved him to a hospital. Actually, I'm just coming from there. So he had a very, very, may have ruptured a plaque or a critical lesion in his LAD and then had a massive heart attack. So hopefully he'll get better. Anyway, so I'm saying it is just relevant to today's discussion that this happened right this morning.
Yeah.
And healthy. Just been to scaled Kailash mountain, did hold the parikrama twice last year. So that's how hidden this disease is.
Yeah.
And I don't know if he'd gotten a checkup or not gotten a checkup before the marathon, but many times it doesn't show up. So,
Yeah.
you have to be careful.
Yeah. So I believe that awareness is something which is very important, and a lot of time we don't go for general checkups as well. So as a doctor, you are helping every morning, every night. So Dr. Naresh Trehan, he doesn't need any introduction. He's a visionary healthcare leader. He not only created impact in cardiac care, I would say, but entire healthcare ecosystem in India. I think it is impossible to calculate the magnitude of impact he has created and life he has touched. Please give him a big round of applause. Sir, it's an honor to have you here with this fireside session with you. Thank you very much for joining this conference. Thanks a lot.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much.
So I'm a lesser known face here. I will quickly introduce myself. I am a doctor by training. I did my MBBS way back in 1998. I did my post-graduation in general medicine way back in 2004. And I'm a serial entrepreneur. I built a hospital chain for tier 2, tier 3 towns of India, sickness hospitals. I exited in 2019 after building 10 hospitals. And post that, I ventured into health tech startup. And now I'm building another platform, Voice of Healthcare. And we are making it world's largest communication platform for healthcare community. So that's quickly about me. So sir, for this fireside session, we have two parts. First round is a broader round, and second is a rapid fire round. We will keep it a little easy and light. So my first question to you is that you moved back to India in 1988, right? So you had a settled life in the US. You were doing well. And I believe that you democratized cardiac care in India. And I cannot imagine the kind of care now available in India without you being in the picture. So what made you decide to come back to India during that time?
So, Naveen, let's start from a step before that. I was at King George's Medical College in Lucknow, one of the finest institutions. And my desire to go to America, or awareness, arose out of frustration. The frustration came from, as students, we had 4-hour duty by a patient's bedside in whom we knew had mitral stenosis, that was clear, had developed ascites, and then what we were doing to actually re-infuse the acidic fluid into the internal jugular vein by way of a small hand pump, and our duty was to rotate the pump for 4 hours so that trickle by trickle the protein would go back into the blood. That is how we spent our nights. Okay. Did little research, found that there was already treatment starting for mitral stenosis. There were surgeries, although the mortality was more than 50% at that time, but the process has started. So that's when I said, if this is the kind of medicine we are practicing, where we know what it is, we know what needs to be done, and we're totally capable today to do it, then it's be good to go train and then come back to India. So the thought was from very beginning. It's not like a new thought while I was there. It got reinforced. So I trained for 7 years at New York University in New York. Then they asked me to stay on to the faculty. So I was teaching, practicing, all those things were happening. So that's different. But when I came into practice, every year incrementally from 50 to 150, 200 patients would come from India to New York for me to operate on them, because nobody was doing coronary bypass surgery at that time in India. So we are the first generation of bypass surgeons. So each one of them had the same thing. I was acutely aware it used to cost them $50,000 in those days. And they kept saying for each one of us, it's such a big thing moving our whole family there, staying there for 3, 4 weeks and then coming back. It was quite an ordeal. So they always said, for us, of course, we have been able to be fortunate that we could afford it, but there are thousands in India who can't, and I was acutely aware of it. So actually the process started many years before I finally came to come back to India. Because one thing that I understood was that to be able to succeed and do something in India, you did not just want to come yourself and start operating, but you needed the whole ecosystem. So that's how the history of Escorts Heart Institute, that luck came in many forms, but the determination was there forever. So all these things put together, we inaugurated it in 1988 when I returned, and some of the colleagues are still with us. And so this is a 35-year, 36-year journey now. But it shows two things to me. One, that the Indian brain, and I still believe it, that we have a better brain than anybody in the world.
I totally agree with you.
I could kick the behind of every American surgeon who was competing with us, because we started at 32. Every year, half of us would be, and only 2 of us will make heart surgery. So I know that whole system. But unfortunately, the ecosystem and the environmental and cultural thinking is such that we actually put ourselves backwards. We don't need to be. We are superior. We do so many things which are much better than anybody else in the world, but we don't get to the end product. 70%, 80% of IT is created in India. We are very happy being the pharmacy to the world as generics. Why are we still in generics for the last 40 years? Why cannot we move up the value chain? So this is limitation of our thinking, our environment, our ecosystem. And I was just talking to Dr. Ganesh just now, and I'm saying ICMR may be an opportunity to create a brain bank which takes India, at least in our field, to another level, like we did in telecom.
Exactly.
It took one man to actually leapfrog from landline to digital now. I mean, the whole transformation is taking place. So now you know that we never invested in landlines as much as we would have, which other countries were forced to. And we went to cell phones right away.
Exactly. I
And
totally
we are now planning G6. So there is a huge thing that one man, Sam Petroda, thought of it, created the concept. The rest, everybody else helped, of course, but I'm saying we can do that in all the fields of the world.
I totally agree with you, Dr. Khanna.
So that's why I am happy that we came back with the whole. And one good thing that I had actually requested my boss, the American University in NYU, my boss and his boss, to say, we are going to India, we are making the Heart Institute, I need your help. Give me 22 of my colleagues who will come to India for 3 months, help me start it up, and then all I want from you is I'll bear all the expenses, just pay their salary. And the president of the university agreed. But when I started putting our team together in India, the thought came, if I bring the Americans here, which is all paid for, all our life we will be told the Americans did it for India. I became confident, and our colleagues are sitting here. I said, we shall do it ourselves. And then I went and apologized to my colleagues there who were like totally disappointed. For them, it was fun to come to India for fully paid. So I said, this is the reason why I don't want to do it. And we opened in 88 and 1992, when we were doing more surgery than my parent institution, we invited all of them for a conference. So just so that they could understand.
Truly inspiring. Truly inspiring.
No, so I think it's not something that we can't do. we should continue to do.
Correct.
But and anybody in this room is capable. I'll give you just one more example. I don't know how much time we have, but I was lecturing in Calcutta to 3,000 techies. Okay, and I was giving them the same thing of how AI and medtech are going. Like AI is not new to medicine. We've been using all the algorithms and all that stuff. But now it's going to the next step, and the next step it's been unleashed now. Okay. So I was talking to them about where AI will take a role in medicine, in healthcare, and the ones who don't jump onto it will be the ones who will be fossilized. Because, like somebody said, I don't remember the name of the author of this, but they said that the illiterates of the world
Right.
are not going to be people who have gone to college and become professors. The illiterates of this world are going to be those people who cannot unlearn and learn again, because the whole world is going to go upside down and you need to learn again. So that's basically the few things that come up. So after I finished, there was a professor from Oxford. He opened his lecture. He says, each one of you 3,000 people here is thinking, how can I be the next unicorn? Right? He says, let me start. None of the unicorns is a genius. Most of them are dropouts.
Exactly.
Okay? What I would suggest to you if you want to be a unicorn is take one day from the moment your eyes open to the time your eyes close, note down every activity that you did. Spend the rest of the week thinking, what is the better way of doing what I was doing today? And you'll have the answer. Like he says, you look at, if you lived in New York, you saw that between 4 to 6, you could not find a taxi. Everybody was standing like this. The guy said, why does this happen when there are so many drivers around, people who need jobs? Uber came. People hate to go stand in lines. So all these other electronic payment happened, all this, and then the Zomatos of the world came. So this is just to simplify your process. It's not that these are genius, they observed what was needed and then they created it. And the IT was available to make the product. So I think the basic thing is not what triggers you, but this trigger should be 24/7 in your mind, that how can you do better, better, better. We get so busy with our own work. We are very happy. If you look at all the pharmaceutical companies, they are very happy. They made a lot of money. But they are very happy staying at the lowest level, not going up. So I think that's where we really need, and we have an opportunity. And I personally feel Trump has done us a big favor, because he gave a kick in the pants, say, wake up, India. We can do things ourselves, we should, and we should come on top of the rest of the world. This is the potential that I believe. Okay, sorry, deviated from medicine, but
thank you. I was just talking to Dr. Ganesh also that India is a land of opportunity, and my daughter is studying in the US, and the way Trump is, throwing tantrum, she was a little upset. I keep telling her that you come back, because there are a lot of opportunities. But today's time, whatever you want to tell to kids, they won't do that. They will do just opposite. So I have stopped telling that to her. Coming back to you, Dr. Trian. So you have been doing, you have been performing surgeries for last almost 5 decades, and I believe that you have worked with the most primitive equipment, and nowadays you are working with the most sophisticated equipment. So there are few things which haven't changed. So what are those things things changed and not changed?
the only thing that has not changed, which makes a difference, is the mindset. If you look at it, what is the limitation of a human being? The limitation of a human being is thinking beyond yourself and thinking big. If you have thought of it, there is a good chance you'll get there. I mean, you take your own example. You just gave the, like, you were trained as a doctor, but you transformed yourself. So I'm saying that there is only the limitation is you yourself. You need to discover where your talent lies, where you can unleash spirit, and that's where you will go. If your spirit only limits you to a certain level, it won't go anywhere. So I think there are examples, there are people who think on a daily basis, how can I do things better? How can I be more relevant to the world? How can I train more people? This comes from within. If you say you're selfish and scared, then you will be very reticent to train anybody. If you have confidence in yourself and you feel you think big, you'll freely teach other people. So I'm saying that this is the basic thing that Indian mindset has we have not liberated ourselves totally from our shackles of the 200 years of slavery or 2000 years of slavery, whatever. So I think, like I said, I am very proud. I have my colleague sitting here, Dr. Praveen Chandra. He cannot stop teaching. Get on a plane, go on a plane, start, do the process and get on to the plane back again through the night and come to work in the morning. So this is the kind of work you need to do. You can't be like thinking that, okay, there are people who need to do around also. So the world has to go around. But I think the ones who have the spirit should take it to the ultimate.
So my next question to you is, Dr. Han, India is considered to be a capital of heart diseases, and where do we stand in terms of this burden? Number one, number two, if I talk about total healthcare ecosystem, we have now Ayushman Bharat, ABDM. So, what is your point of view? Where are we heading to? I mean, what is the future of India in terms of healthcare from your vantage point?
See, there are two parts to it. If you study the world, there is no country, and I can reinforce that thought, excuse me, no country in the world that has been able to come up with the perfect healthcare system.
Absolutely.
So then perfect means you go give decent quality of care to all your citizens. America, whose GDP is 28 lakh
Trillion.
$1 trillion, we are trying to be 5. Even they have not solved it. I mean,
Their healthcare system is broken.
right, okay. No, what the people say to us as doctors, the statisticians, that is all the fault of medicine, people are living longer. Because we calculated on people going away at 60. Now you're extending life to 80, 90. So how can we
Life
provide the
expectancy,
social security?
Yeah.
Right? Be as it may, India has done, and I think I can take a little credit for writing the first draft of Ayushman Bharat.
Thank you and congratulations, sir.
No, many people curse me because they don't make enough money from there, so the rates are not
That's
that
the
great.
world's largest social scheme, and it's helping.
No, I see, that's what I'm saying. One of the things is that the purity of thought doesn't remain; it gets contaminated as we go down. So if people are using it for political reasons, for whatever reasons, these are all things that are happening, which will make it a little more difficult. But the point basically is, it is a system. If you look at it now, 10 years ago, there was only the CGHS, ECHS scheme. There were 3 to 5% private insurance. Today, ECHS, CGHS still exists, although payment may be delayed. Their private insurance has grown to 12 to 18% now. Ayushman has brought in another, supposed to bring in 50 crore people, but maybe at least 10, 20 crores have been brought into the loop. So there is a many more people who are on the track to be receiving healthcare as we go. Now the 70 plus scheme was announced of Ayushman. So all these things are very good signs. Now, what are the challenges of the world? The challenges of the world are two. One is runaway cost of delivery. Rightfully so, people must realize when we became heart surgeons, we used to get paid $8,500 per case, for which we had to do only 1 hour of work. And 8,500 in those days would mean at least $30,000 today. That's how much it is. The dollar worth is buying power has gone down. Today, the same procedure, doctors are getting 2,700. The reason is that as the attendant costs of healthcare go up, the public cannot keep up with it by paying the premiums. The other problem is that the inefficiencies that exist in the system whether it is insurance, they pay too much, a large fraction of it goes away to acquiring business, all that. These are many vagaries which can be corrected. Okay. But we will all have to come together again to say, how are we going to contain cost of healthcare? Okay. How is it that the safety net is created for more and more people? Affordability. Affordability means premiums. See, not everybody should get free Ayushman because, like I said, it's being abused also. So you can create products where you have basic Ayushman and then you buy more if you want to get better health. But there are many people who can pay maybe 5,000 rupees a year, that kind of stuff, just to top up your insurance policy. And these things have not really come up yet, but they're starting. Okay. So on one hand, on the patient side, there has to be coverage to almost every individual that we can give. Second, on our side, the delivery cost should be contained as much as we can. On the government side, is that unnecessary burden should not be put on healthcare delivery. Again, it should be passed on to the patient. So recently, the GST Council has done some good work. But now it's up to us to actually give that relief to the patient. And that's what our moral duty is. So I think that there are things happening to rationalize, to realize that we cannot have rampant runaway cost of healthcare like happened in many other countries. And if you see in UK and some of the European countries, you can't get healthcare for 6 months. You can't get an MRI for 6 months.
Even ultrasound.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. So we have a great advantage. We have a good ecosystem as far as private hospitals and government are. We need to double our capacity in the next 5 to 10 years. We need to double our doctors, nurses. This is all opportunity for employment. What does a country move on? The employment. If we can provide employment to millions and millions more people, the more people will come to drive the economic cycle and the better economic cycle will work. America didn't get built just like that. It is the economic cycle which makes any country. So I think that, this we can go on and on.
Yeah.
I'm sure you have limited time and I should also take a break. But the basic thing is you touched on a subject which I can talk for days.
No, I understand. I agree that I believe.
So all of us need to rebalance ourselves. That's what I'm saying. Why? The opportunity of that is what is good for India is good for 4 billion people in our area.
Right.
4 billion people will benefit. So we have a business opportunity there.
Right.
And now you've been opening hospitals in. Let me invite you. Let's go to Africa. Why not? Okay. So we have a deal.
Let's move to my favorite part. Although I wanted to speak more about it, But let's move to my favorite part, which is rapid fire round. So I have a couple of questions for you. Some are on lighter note as well. So do you think surgery of CAD will eventually become unnecessary with invention of newer drugs, just like bariatric surgeries have reduced due to newer medications? What do you think about
Well, I
that?
hope one day it does. For the benefit of humanity, I think it's a good idea. If it can happen, yes, why not?
What's your opinion about young doctors today? Is the new generation chasing work-life balance? How do you view Gen Z doctors?
First of all, if you ask the real Gen Zs, do you want to become a doctor?
They
No.
don't.
Right. If
But
you,
there are
no, but if you say you want to become, if you have to become a doctor, what would you like to be? Do you want to be a surgeon? No. Cardiology, yes. Dentist, absolutely, because the dentists make a lot of money with very little work. Sorry if there's a dentist here, but the other thing is radiology, where the patient doesn't talk back to you, so it's the X-ray film which you run. So Gen Z has become a little impatient. So the dialogue actually which we have is, if I work 6 hours a day, 6 days a week, which most of us do, or all of us do, from morning to night, it doesn't make any sense if to an outsider. They'll say, what the hell is, what's wrong with you?
and we are taking calls even on Sundays as well.
I just told you I got woken up at 7
This
in the morning for this gentleman. So that's okay. Then I woke up Praveen Chandra because needed a number. So this is the whole thing. We're all awake all the time. That's not a worry. But somebody asks you, why are you doing it? You have enough money. Why don't you enjoy yourself? But this is our joy.
Fun. This is fun.
No, it just gives
Passion.
you inner joy.
Yeah.
So if that's the inner joy you have, then why not? Then why go? Because after a few days, you start feeling, I mean, not that we don't travel, we like to travel, we like to holiday, but it has to be in proportion. When people say, I'm going away for a month, I mean, I can't even imagine what you do for a month. So anyway,
My next question. Many doctors draw inspiration from you. Where do you draw inspiration from?
inspiration or
Yeah.
patience?
Inspiration. We draw
No,
inspiration.
I am
from
my
you.
own victim. Because I took to heart what my guru taught me. And that is, he used to say, Dr. Frank Spencer, God bless his soul. He said, if you are standing still, please understand you're going backwards because the world has moved. And if you're not better today than yesterday, you wasted 24 hours. So I live by that. I actually live thinking every morning where we're going to move the needle. Okay? And that's what my actual communication to my colleagues is also. Let's just keep dreaming where we can take to the next level, and good things will happen.
Yeah. If you have to choose between surgery and management, what will you?
Certainly surgery.
The one habit every Indian should adopt for better heart health.
Better heart health. Stop eating parathas.
The most common misconception about heart disease you wish to correct.
No, so you see, we always believe, and I gave you his story of this gentleman who's an ex-army guy,
Exactly.
fit and well. So that misconception should go away. There are 2, 3 things that you can easily understand. If you have, and like we say, know your genes. If you have heart disease in the family, you know that the children will have double the risk of heart disease. So it's genetically prevalent, and now we can do the genome sequencing. We can actually write the health horoscope of an individual. That's what we are doing now at our institution. Second thing is that diabetes is the other big danger, right? and you know somebody has diabetes in your family, so then your risk also doubles.
Yeah.
Now, if you are both, God forbid, then you're a train wreck. So you need to be even extremely careful. So what I recommend today, make it short. 25 years, by 25 years, if you have any family history, you must have your full evaluation. Means all your biochemicals, your physical, all that genetic. And genome sequencing is available for 10,000 rupees now. It's not like it used to be like a lakh of rupees. So get your, like your parents get your Janam Patri made when you are born, you get your own health Patri made
Correct.
when at this point, right? Then you know how to steer your life.
Right.
And if you have no disease at all and you are healthy, then by the age of 30, you must have your checkup. And this checkup, then the doctor will tell you how frequently you need it.
Correct.
Okay, so that's why I think preventive checkup will not guarantee 100%, but greater than 95% we will detect things.
Yeah.
And what,
At least
what
we can-
Dr. Ganesh was telling me about the National Hypertension Mission.
Yeah.
We did a study, Dr. Saab, of 10,000 executives who came to us for their executive health check. 26% of them did not know that they had hypertension. So it's the most silent killer because you don't feel it till you start getting headaches or you bleed or something bad happens or your kidneys pack up. So I think that is the other. So preventive checkups will prevent many maladies in many people's lives.
My next question, one healthcare innovation or startup you truly admire?
And
You truly admire one innovation or startup in today's time, one innovation or
now you see there are many, but the one if you were to choose, I am a believer in remote monitoring.
remote marketing.
Remote monitoring will be it's already there, but it will be like the cell phone. I mean, people use all this ultra-human and all these other devices and things like that. But the main function of those is to say, how well did you sleep? If you don't know how well you slept, then you're in trouble. You need a ring to tell you whether you slept or not. I don't know. I hope you're not wearing any.
One must-have quality every entrepreneur should possess.
Integrity is the only virtue one needs. The rest follows itself. Purity of thought will lead you automatically to the next step and the next step. You don't have to struggle.
I agree.
It's the other way around. And that's one of the problems when I talk so emphatically about the best brains. I also say that God gave us a twist in our tail. It's very difficult for Indians to walk. That's the problem.
So last three quick questions. One Indian actor you relate to the most?
Indian actor.
Indian actor or
Now you got me foxed. The only guy this maybe it's my generation. Yeah, how can you admire an actor? Yeah, the actor is doing what he's doing. Yeah. So
okay, then your favorite actress?
Amitabh Bachchan, I have known him very closely, but I have seen some values in him which most actors have not revealed to me yet.
Right.
So that's why, he has a heart. He's been accused of many things, but he does have a heart. By the way, he volunteered to become the poster boy for Stop TB Haryana.
Yeah.
So he called me up. He said, I know you're doing this. TB Free Haryana, I'll be your poster boy if you want me. So, those are kind of things that touch you.
Your favorite
So,
actress?
Actress, now, you don't reveal these things,
One piece of advice, last question then. One piece of advice you would give to your young cardiac surgeons?
Look, I believe that when you talk about will coronary artery bypass surgery vanish, people worry about it. They worry, younger people, if you're saying, what is my future in heart surgery? Nothing's going to disappear. New things will happen. So new technologies will come. You have to master those. You see, it's like mastering a new animal.
Right.
Right? So everything will be a challenge, But pursue what you believe in, what is your natural talent, because that will take you very far. So I was asked to give a convocation address to an IIM, and they asked me what will be the title of your talk, because it's a convocation address. So I said to them, there are no geniuses. If you believe that that guy is so much better than me, he's a genius, doesn't happen like that. It is a combination of three, four values that integrity I talked about, incessantly pursuing what you believe in, okay, and a little bit of luck also. So if you would translate it, if you go on a beach side, you will see many, or where there is a surfing beach, you'll see many surfers waiting for the waves. Right? And people will catch all sorts of waves. But the guy who catches the highest wave and has the guts to get on top of it, because it doesn't, you can be scared of it also. And the guts to get on top of it will go the farthest. So that's what you need. Guts, you need persistent obsession with something, and then you carry it out with integrity. That's the farthest you can go. That's all.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We had a really wonderful discussion with Dr. Prahan. I think we need to block, next time, we need to block little more time slots so that we talk more about your stories and words of wisdom. So thank you very much. Thanks a lot. Once again, a big round of applause for Dr.
Thank you. And of course, whatever was the science, all these people are very much more ahead of us to talk about science. So, okay, bye.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jahan, once again. And I would invite Dr. Nishchal to kindly hand over a small token of our gratitude to Dr. Jahan. Thank you, sir. And especially thank you for bringing out the lighter side, sir. And we will definitely want to understand that name of the actress in a short while. So, thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much. It is indeed, ladies and gentlemen, an extreme pleasure for us to hear the veterans here on stage. Uh, I don't think, Simran, it could be better than this. We start on a note. We start on a note where we not just have a super institutional cardiologist speaking to us, and that too bringing in that hearty conversation to this entire thing or genre that we're talking about, where we're saying anxiety is one of the biggest factors that is affecting, and bringing in that lighter note really make us lighted the whole moment.
And I think we all really understood and enjoyed each and every answer of his, and it makes us realize that how much we need to take care of our heart health, and even at this with this much of experience, how humble, kind, and a lighter person we can be.
And that sense of humor, that lightness is still there every time, every moment. I think for my young colleagues here, that is one of the takeaways that I could do. Of course, education is something that you are getting on. So anyway, so with this, let's get back to the rhythm. I think we got a little carried away with that wonderful conversation that we all heard, but we now get into, once again, the next section.
Yes. So now we're shifting our gears to a focused presentation that highlights the power of innovation, collaboration, science in saving lives. In a world where cardiovascular care is evolving rapidly, staying ahead with evidence-based innovation is the key to improving outcomes for millions of Indians. And it is my absolute pleasure to welcome a true leader in medical innovation and cardiovascular excellence, Dr. Rishi Jain, Country Medical Head, Novartis, India. Dr. Jain will share his perspective on how groundbreaking medical advances are transforming cardiovascular outcomes shaping the future of heart health in India. We would like to welcome Dr. Rishi Jain on stage. Can we have a round of applause?
Welcome, sir. And all my young colleagues, it is your time to take out your notepads because this is going to be information and knowledge. Welcome, sir. Thank you.
Thank you and good morning, everyone. Thanks to the Voice of Health team for inviting me. It's a task to speak after Dr. Trehan and keep the momentum going. I'll try my best. So, I'm not going to talk about medicines and products because this is more into the problem. So, I'll touch more on the problem and how big is the problem and what together we need to do to solve this problem. These are few of my disclaimers. All the opinions are mine and it's not from the organization side. We were talking about cardiovascular, right? And we talk about cancers, we talk about multiple diseases. Cardiovascular diseases are the #1 cause of death globally. And we talk about cancers most of the time. I also work in oncology. I see lots of oncology drugs. The focus and attention, what we get when we speak about oncology is much, much more than when we talk about cardiovascular. But if you see the facts, cardiovascular deaths are much, much higher than the deaths due to oncology diseases. And to make these numbers little simpler, these may not make sense. In 60 seconds, while I'm speaking to you, in 60 seconds, can someone throw a number? How many people die of cardiovascular atherosclerotic disorders due to MI and stroke? In 60 seconds, how many people die globally? 5, 10, 20, any number? Every 2 seconds, we are losing a human being because of atherosclerotic disorder. So when I speak this, also people are dying. So every 60 seconds, around 34 people die with atherosclerosis worldwide due to MI or stroke. So is it not mind-boggling that the numbers are so huge? Every 60 seconds, we lose 34 people because of atherosclerotic cardiovascular diseases which end up into MI and stroke. As a country, we were talking about the opportunities what we have, but on the other side, if you see from a disease perspective, is it genes, is it our lifestyle? I don't know what it is, but we are not doing really great. Why we are not doing great is we get the disease earlier in the age. We saw people saying that Indians get almost 10 years earlier the myocardial infarction and stroke. So we get it early. The disease shows a poor outcome and exhibit a more severe form. So the mortality is higher. And if you look at the numbers, we touched about 54.5 million, which is roughly around 6 crore people have this disease. And 25% of all death, out of 1% dying anywhere in India is because of cardiovascular death. So the numbers are mind-boggling. But what worries me more is not the number. So the problem is there. But what worries me more is unawareness of the problem. And I'll talk to you about unawareness about the problem from US perspective, and then we can imagine how the situation will be in India. So in US, so LDLC, I'll talk about LDLC, which is, I see some students probably here, so which we commonly say as bad cholesterol, which I personally don't like to call it a bad cholesterol because we are trying to not hit the nail on the head. We need not use words like good cholesterol and bad cholesterol. There are so many types of cholesterol. Let's pin it directly to LDLC cholesterol, which is the most important culprit. And while in US, they did a survey, they found people having LDLC more than 160, between the range of 160 to 190, 50% of the people were not aware that they had a high cholesterol. And when it was above 190 also, almost 25% of people were not aware that they had high LDL-C, which is more than 190. And 190, let me tell you, is very high because in normal people we expect it to be less than 100. So it was almost double of that, but people were not aware. These are people who did not had any myocardial infarction or stroke. If I talk about people who had stroke or myocardial infarction and have survived, 55% of those people were still not aware about what LDL-C level they had. LDL-C is one of the most important causative factor. It's a modifiable causative factor which leads to MI and stroke. And 55% of US people who had an MI and stroke were not aware that what their LDL-C goal is, what is the LDL-C they should be at. So problem is there, but the bigger problem I see is the awareness. We see there is a lack of awareness, and we did a recent survey. Not a survey, it was a patient advisory board. We spoke to 10 Indian patients who had myocardial infarctions, and none of them were aware about LDL-C. They only knew good cholesterol, bad cholesterol. None of them knew about LDL-C cholesterol. None of them knew what is the target LDL-C they should be at. So the problem is wider. It's not only being prevalent atherosclerotic disorder, but also the awareness, which I think all of us together need to solve for. This is the ICMR India B study which showed that out of the most important CV risk factors, lipids was one of the most critical modifiable CV risk factor in South Asian patients with myocardial infarction. While we have worked so hard in the past, the numbers have not changed. Either they have plateaued or they continuously increase. So we have not seen the trend what we would love to see. We will like to see the number of cardiovascular deaths going down, but unfortunately that has not happened, and we still see the cardiovascular death continues to increase, or in some countries this may have plateaued, but the way we want to see this trajectory, it's not happening that way. The trends demonstrate need for increased investment in prevention and treatment. And treatment is one part of it, right? But when you talk about public health, treatment cannot solve the problem. The problem has to be solved by prevention. We need to work in a direction that we are able to prevent these problems. And the prevention can only happen with awareness. If we are able to raise awareness about LDL-C, about LDL-C goal, and hypertension, diabetes are also big problem. But one good piece is people are aware. Most of the people know what high blood pressure is. Most of the people know what high blood sugar is. So they know diabetes, they know hypertension. But awareness about lipids, awareness about hypercholesterolemia is still very, very nascent. And we really need to work on improving that awareness. 80% of Indian ASCVD patients are unable to reach their target goal. And this is a bigger problem. We know the target goal, HCPs knows the target goal. We have medications available in the country who can help us reach there. But in a recent study which we did at more than 600 patients, we realized that 80% of the patients were not at the target goal. And this is not the right situation to be in. We are doing a larger study with 6,000 patients to revalidate the finding, but the numbers are in the same direction. 80% of the people are not reaching the LDL-C target goal, and the awareness that they are not at goal is much, much lesser. The problem is medication adherence. So we do have medications which can help us reach the target goal. But what we have seen, people are not adherent to the therapies. They take therapies for some days, some months, and then leave the therapy. So adherence has come out as a very, very big problem. With more than 50% Indian patients show less to moderate adherence to lipid lowering therapies. And another problem due to adherence comes is the variability. So we see LDLC level are not stable; they come and up. And this brings me to the next point: is while bringing LDLC down is important, it is very important. But another two things which we need to consider is when. The earlier we are able to address the problem, as early we are able to bring, plus sustaining it at that level. These are the two important things what is needed. While many of the people are able to reach LDLC goal, but they are not sustained, and they go again, the goals are increasing. So two important things to remember is how do we reach the goals early, and how are we able to sustain those LDLC goals, which is very important. The problem is not for one day. The problem is a lifelong problem. Like we have to manage our blood pressure from a long-term chronic perspective, we have to maintain our sugars from a long-term perspective. Same is for lipids. We need to really maintain as early as possible and sustain that reduction. And why it is important? Because there is enough data to suggest if we are able to reduce LDLC level, if we are able to reduce the blood cholesterol levels, the benefits are proven. The benefits are proven in terms of reduction in myocardial infarction, in terms of reduction of all-cause mortality, in terms of reduction of death. So we have all the benefits proven by multiple studies which show that important is to reduce the LDLC cholesterol because these benefits will remain. There is an urgent need to break implementation gaps in healthcare systems to improve population outcomes because until unless we find solutions which are sustainable, which can be rolled out at a population level, it may not be possible to address this problem. Important is to find these barriers. What are the barriers? Why we are not able to address these problems? Innovate strategies. Find innovative solutions. And very recently, Novartis as an organization has brought up a very innovative solution to manage LDLC cholesterol. So this is an injectable therapy which is given once in 6 months, which addresses a lot of problem of adherence. So we saw adherence is a very big problem. So these patients are given just one injection in 6 months and their LDLC are able to be managed for sustained reduction for almost 6 months. So we need to look at innovative solutions, implement those solutions and sustain achieved improvement so that we are able to adhere to the goals what we have planned for. Just to conclude, ASCVD is a diffuse disease making comprehensive risk factor management essential. Elevated LDLC contributes to the development and progression of ASCVD. Recent guidelines recommend lowering the LDLC target to less than 55 mg per deciliter, reinforcing the principle that lower is better for LDLC cholesterol. Greatest CV risk reduction is seen in patients with the largest LDLC decline, while those without LDLC improvement remains at the highest risk. So it's proven that if we are able to address the problem, we can save a lot number of lives. So the last message what I want to leave with is the lower the LDLC we are able to achieve, the sooner we are able to achieve and longer sustained LDLC reduction what we are able to maintain. It is a key strategy to reduce ASCVD risk. Thanks for this.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jain. If you can join us here, and I invite Dr. Nishchal to please step up on the stage to hand over a small token of our gratitude to you, sir.
Thank you so much, sir, for that amazing presentation. Can we have a round of applause? Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. So, this was truly powerful and incredible once again, but lot of knowledge came into this one, right?
Definitely.
Were we able to, we want to really make this conversational for all my colleagues who are sitting at the back. Before we get into the next session and while we prepare the stage for the next session, I think we want to first of all start by thanking Novartis.
Definitely, because not only this presentation, but the coming up panel is also, partnered by Novartis. Our session partner for this segment, and we thank for their unwavering commitment to advancing cardiovascular care. So thank you so much, Novartis.
Give it a round of applause. And this also kind of comes in for a time for a kind of knowledge check. है ना?
Knowledge check.
तो एक काम करते हैं, थोड़ा सा knowledge check करते हैं while we are preparing the stage. And this is open for you also, sir. Huh? We promise you, this is going to challenge your things as well. So, Simran, you asked the question to the audience, and what I'm going to do is I will come to you. If you know the answer, raise your hand. I will come to you and you tell us. Okay? Let's go for it.
Okay. So the first question is, in which year was India's first heart transplant performed?
Okay.
Option A,
Oh, wait.
1985.
We already, but that's not the answer. Okay. Okay, so you raise your hand if you know the answer and I'll come to you. So, sir, first of all, what's your name and what do you do? I think it is 1985. You think it's 1985. Okay. I don't know whether that's the right answer or not. How many of us believe it's 9? So do you have a different answer? Okay, fantastic. And I want to come to you. Please introduce yourself before you give us the answer. आप तो इंश्योरेंस वाले हो, आपको पता होगा. ये भी ठीक है. So 1975 and 1985. Somebody who holds a different answer? My God, sir. No, I have to take this from the head table. This is important. The head table is happening. Yes, sir.
So the first transplant took place in Holiday Street in 1994. In fact, that year in the Delhi chapter of Cardiovascular Society of India, Dr. Naresh Trehan was there, and so this is going back into your memories. The first cardiac transplant was done in All India Street by Dr. P.V. Gopal in 1994. There was a tussle going on at that time, actually. Who would do the first cardiac transplant? And I still remember Dr. Trehan was there, Dr. Gopal was there. The venue was the annual meeting of the Delhi chapter of Cardiovascular Society of India. And Dr. Trehan said, when you beat us on that. That was his refrain, I still clearly remember. So it's 1994, there's no doubt in that.
Of course, Dr. Bansal. So you know the back history also, which I wasn't kind of aware. This was the insider story that you got to hear. And this is the power of the voice of healthcare. It truly defines this event. So it's not just about knowledge, but it's also about these very, very finer inner anecdotes that you get to hear. I think, Simran, I have my answer. Please show us what is the right answer. Of course, it is 1994. It's going without saying, with so much backstory, which even we could not dig out of Google because that's the best we had. So, thank you so much. But with this, it is time for us to get into our next knowledge section. Extremely powerful again, very well curated and moderated for you. It is time for us to invite our extremely powerful and decorated panelists to join us on stage. Here they are.
And for our next session, which is Beyond Conventional Therapy, Standardizing Cholesterol Care and LDL-C Protocols for Policy Impact, which will explore how clinical practice, therapies and health policy can come together to create a measurable national impact. And for this, I would like to invite our speakers for this. Dr. Sandeep Bansal, Director, VMMC and Safdarjung Hospital. Thank you so much, sir. Dr. Praveen Chandra, Chairman, Interventional Cardiology, Medanta Medicity, Gurugram.
So unfortunately, Dr. Praful Sharma could not make it with us today due to some unforeseen circumstances. We apologize for that, but we do have with us Dr. P. Ganesh Kumar, scientist and PM head for Division of Non-Communicable Diseases, ICMR, NIE. I invite you, sir, to please join in, and this session will be moderated by Dr. Tina
Rawal, Senior Research Scientist, Public Health Foundation of India. Ladies and gentlemen, please join us in welcoming our speakers for this panel discussion. Thank you, ma'am.
Dr. Rawal, the job is yours to bring out the best out of this wonderful panelist now. It's all yours, ma'am. Thank you.
I must say, very, very difficult.
because I think sharing a space with such a renowned, I think, scientist and cardiologist, I think takes a lot of guts. What we have heard, I think, in the earlier session. So just to start with, I think we have been hearing since morning that India is witnessing the surge in the cardiac episodes. It's not only in the elderly population, but among the young adults as well. And with the LDL emerging as not a silent but very critical risk factor. So, despite of growing awareness, the management and the detection remains a challenge, especially what we have heard in this session also, that especially for the rural and the semi-urban sessions. So, starting with this, I would request Dr. Sandeep Bansal. So, if you're talking about the standard protocol and policies, how does LDLC contribute to the rising burden of the heart attack and stroke in India? Over to you, sir.
So I think that point has already been made. It's the major risk factor that has been already shown in several studies, including the Interheart, and we have a real burgeoning population of diabetics. So across the board, LDL is a major one. It's got causal relation, and there are n number of studies to show that if you bring it down, then you reduce the mortality also. Now, having said that, uh, do we have a policy in place? Unfortunately, Government of India also does not have any recommendations as to at what age should you measure the cholesterol and how often should you repeat the cholesterol. We have, we worked hard on diabetes and on hypertension. There was, so it is recommended that once you are 30, you should get your blood sugar measured and your blood pressure measured. And as Dr. Trehan was saying, the how frequently to repeat, uh, that will depend upon what your readings are. And in fact, the Government of India had launched a program called the 75-25, which basically meant that by the year 2025, India, we would have, detected 75 million people with diabetes or hypertension, and the government has been able to achieve that particular goal. But in terms of cholesterol, while we do have guidelines or recommendations from our professional bodies, the Cardiovascular Society of India, and there is a group of people who call themselves the Lipid Association of India. They all have their guidelines. So ideally, as per them, and this is actually in consonance with the standard American or the European guidelines, which basically say that once you're 18, you should be able to, you should at least measure your cholesterol and your lipid profile once. But we also need to understand India it's a different ballgame altogether. We did some little work. We presented it at a place called Europrevent, which is the European Society of Cardiology's prevention program. We picked up 60 children, 13 in each group. These people were aged between 12 to 15, and the denominator was one of the parents had diabetes or hypertension in half of them, and in the other half there was no diabetes or hypertension. And we measured everything in them: their metabolic parameters, which mean their sugars, their lipid profiles, we did their echoes and their ECGs, everything. The values were still numerically within normal range, but they were significantly deranged as compared to parents who did not have either of them. Meaning thereby that in our country, we need to, we need to actually work up much earlier in terms of not just LDL cholesterol, but in terms of prevention of cardiovascular disease. In fact, let me go a step further. I'm taking a little time, but I think this is important. Let me go a step further. How many of us are aware of a national program which was called the Swasth Nari Sashakt Parivar? That was launched on the birthday of Prime Minister Modi. And see, the important thing is if we have children with good birth weight, Dr. Praveen would be aware, I'm also aware, Aditya would be aware. We all in cardiology are aware of what we call as Baker's hypothesis, which basically says that if the birth rate is lower, then your chances of developing cardiovascular disease and diabetes in the later life are much higher. So prevention actually goes much, way beyond just measuring and treating LDL cholesterol.
Very important. I think it is much more scary. We need to be a little more aware, younger at a younger age. So I think not 30s, not 40s, but I think at the age of 80, when you are becoming the area in the league for the adults. So going into the next segment, Dr. Praveen Chitra, if I may ask you, what are the current challenges in helping patients reach their LDL-C targets?
Yeah, it's a very important question, and it's a challenge actually for most of us, especially the cardiologists, because every day we are seeing more and more patients. And many times people come and talk to you and say, why the heart disease is increasing? And why we are seeing so many cardiac patients? Of course, awareness is one thing, early detection is the second thing, but definitely we since morning we have been having this discussion that genetically we have this higher chances of developing heart diseases at a younger age. So as Sandeep also said that we have to start early, and the current challenge is that most of the times people have not done their cholesterol levels. So now as the recommendation goes, or as the now the current knowledge goes, that everybody who is reaching the age of 25 years or 30 years must have a lipid profile done at least once at that stage. And if the lipid profile is within normal limits, and if all the other risk factors are okay, then he should lead a early healthy lifestyle. But if it is high, then we have to bring it down. First, of course, by lifestyle measures, which most of the times people don't adhere to in the beginning, like at 30, 35, 40, nobody will listen to any such advice and say, okay, I'm so young, I will not have a heart problem. So that is one thing, the denial and not accepting that heart disease can strike. Okay, so only people become a little bit turbulent when there is some news that a young person had a heart attack, or somebody in the family, close family had this thing. So everybody will rush to the pathology lab to get a test done, and then we'll keep asking the doctor or a friend, मैं क्या कराऊं या करके भी जिससे मेरे को पता लग जाए. So one of the easiest thing to do is get a blood pressure checkup done on a regular basis and a lipid profile test, as we are talking since morning, that cholesterol is one of the very important factors which lead to heart problem, and LDL is the target. And once we know that the LDL is high or is on the higher side, then we have to bring it down to a level which is recommended for different people, different levels. For example, if somebody has a heart problem or he is a diabetic, then we say that the level should be below 70 LDL. And many times you see it is above 80, 100, 120, 140. And what they will say? बोलेंगे मैं तो दवा खा रहा था, सब कुछ ठीक चल रहा था, I was taking medicine every day. But the problem is he was not taking medicine in a proper dose. Okay? So the first thing is that we have to tell, or we have to understand that the target has to be reached. Not only just the target is not taking medicine. The target is getting the LDL cholesterol down. Okay, so that is the target. So those people, जैसे किसी आपने you must have heard that bypass surgery was done, and then another angioplasty was done, and he's still having heart problems, etc. So these are very high risk people. In very high risk people, It is actually a terminology, and it's not my terminology. It is a well documented. It's a scientific knowledge. Very high risk individuals. Very high risk individual means he had a previous heart problem, he has a second episode, or he has additional diabetes and high blood pressure and has high cholesterol. In these people, the target is below 40. Okay. Now the question is, we understand that as cardiologists, so we write, okay, you take this dose, which is high dose, and then people don't accept that. They say, okay, no, this is too much for me, I cannot take this, and then they will speak to their family members or to some physician who is not so aware of that. He'll say, okay, इसको reduce कर दो. इसको reduce कर दिया तो क्या हुआ? He is taking the medicine, but he is not getting the benefit. So it's a false sense of security. So that is why this has to be understood, that we have to reach the target to get the benefit. Otherwise, there is no benefit. And there are levels now. The level 1 is that you lifestyle measures. Level 2 is, if it doesn't work, then you take medicines which are known as statins. And there is a very common misconception in society, in newspapers, in social media, that statins are the product of pharma companies and they want to sell it. Please understand, it is not true. It is absolutely false. Nobody is trying to sell it. It is for your own benefit. And they will say that it will kill the liver, it will create all kind of side effects, my memory will go, etc. That is not true. Statins are one of the best medicines for prevention of heart disease until today, apart from aspirin. Okay, so statin has to be given to these people at a reasonable or high dose, whatever is recommended. Get the levels. If that also doesn't work, then there are second level of medicines, tablets which are now available. They can be given. If it doesn't happen with that, then there is a third level of treatment, which is those injectables, which I think Dr. Jain also mentioned. Those injectables can be given to these patients. There are two types of injectables. One is once every 15 days, you can take a shot, and the second is a 6 monthly shot. You can take a shot, repeat after 6 months. So this is the spectrum of treatment which is available now. And if somebody has a target achieved, then the chance of having a coronary artery disease or another episode is minimized, deaths are minimized, heart disease is minimized.
Very, very important considerations. And you mentioned about the social media, which is very, very important factor now influencing the perceptions, especially with the public audience. So I think there is a need for strengthening the awareness where it comes from the point of view that we need from the cardiologist, that how the medicines are important and how it can be created as a public awareness, like a campaign which can generate, I think, and prevent, I think, the management or maybe the cardiac episodes. So coming to Dr. Ganesh Kumar, from policy and public health standpoint, so how can India move towards a national framework that integrates LDLC management with its NCD strategy? Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Dina, for that question. So I come to one experience which we implemented in the past 5 years, which is India Hypertension Control Initiative. When we started in 2017, when we went to the states and we found that none of the states has a treatment protocol. We have guidelines which runs in pages, 50 to 500 pages. But apparently, as a treating physician who is sitting in the primary healthcare center, or whoever is a private practitioner who is a primary physician, they don't know where to start and where to switch over the titration of that. So we introduced that hypertension linear protocol, which is on 3 drugs. We came to know that parallelly, what is the capacity at the ground level in order to treat the hypertension. We found that still it was far from the reality, even availability of a validated blood pressure apparatus was absent. Now, coming to this LDLC, we successfully during this particular implementation over nearly 26 states and across 180 districts, treating 51 lakh hypertension patients and 20 lakh diabetes patients. Our own data, we followed up of these 50 lakh and 20 lakh diabetes patients. Less than 10% of them were under statins. We found that they are very high risk of that. Nearly 20% of them are having high cholesterol levels. Only a sample of them were only tested for that. We introduced including statins into the hypertension protocol and diabetes protocols in a couple of states. Out of the 26 states, only a couple of states have accepted it. There is a consensus guidelines recently which clearly said that any hypertension with the diabetes, start on statins, don't wait for doing a cholesterol level. If anyone who is having a diabetes more than 50 years with a history of smoking, start on statins. If anyone who is having an hypertension and more than 60 years with any one of the complications, start on statins. This has a very significant effect in terms of preventing the premature deaths due to cardiovascular diseases. We successfully introduced in West Bengal that their policy, they have changed into the guidelines, into the protocol. At the start of the drug itself, like if you have diabetes who is having a fasting blood sugar more than 250 milligram per deciliter, and a diabetic who is diagnosed more than 50 years and uncontrolled diabetes with the coexisting hypertension, and we need to immediately start on statins and don't wait for cholesterol. Why I have been repeatedly saying that is, the parallel we need to see two things. One, the capacity in order to understand all these guidelines and the importance of starting the statins is very, very low. Number two, we don't have that whole capacity of doing testing of cholesterol levels at the ground level. We have been seeing this very clearly. It's still segregated, maybe at the T2 levels, still going at the ground level where huge amount of population is living. Access to the testing of cholesterol lipid levels is still low. With this, we tried in setting up the policy of bringing statins into the protocols. With this consensus, it's a recent publication in Global Heart Journal, which published in 2025. We came up with that, like including the statins in the direct diabetes protocol and diabetes protocol. We need protocols and we don't need guidelines. Is one hard message that we have observed, and that way that we can take it further.
Very, very important points. I think we have just heard in one of the quiz which we just have conducted. I think we have been doing this cardiac surgery, I think, since 70s and 80s. Still, we are struggling with the protocols and the guidelines. So it's been more than 4 decades. So just over to again, if I can just come back to Dr. Sathyan. So what are the current gaps in awareness, screening, and the guidelines or the protocol for the management of LDLC, what we are hearing? So what, I mean, still there are like policy gaps or how can be addressed, if you can just highlight on those points.
Yes, first thing is we need to come out with certain amount of policies. As I said, while we have recommendations from the professional bodies, they have not been endorsed at the governmental level for implementation in public. Our problem also is a lot of heterogeneity. We are a country which has several countries within it. So there's a lot of heterogeneity, and that's one reason why we are not able to have universal recommendations. The third problem that has been highlighted already by Dr. Ganesh Kumar, who is going to have every population, every citizen of the country undergo the testing of LDL cholesterol. Our pharma industry is extremely strong. Believe me, say almost close to 17 or 18 years ago, the government recognized that the lowest hanging fruit in terms of cardiovascular management is what is done after a heart attack. So they're actually not causing a primordial prevention, as we call it. Primordial means preventing the risk factors to develop, or primary prevention, wherein you have the risk factors, but you are preventing a heart attack. This is secondary prevention. So there is a policy in place wherein the drugs for patients with those who already had a heart attack, they get free drugs. And there are 4 categories of medicines that are recommended there. Statins are a very important part of that. Then we have what we commonly call as blood thinners or antiplatelet drugs. We have another group of drugs which are called the RAS inhibitors. And finally, we have beta blockers, which are the 4th category of drugs. So we have a policy in place in terms of secondary prevention. Drugs are not an issue. The issue is the people's awareness, number one, the ability to percolate it down to the last man. There comes the role of Amitabh Bachchan, there comes the role of media and the social media, that when one can talk about everything, there are so many things which are promoted in the media. Problems like ultra-refined food, the Gen Z was talked about. There are almost 1,500 sweets that are available in India in different parts of the country, and yet मुंह मीठा करने के लिए हमें chocolate चाहिए. What a stupid thing to do, isn't it? Refined foods and ultra-refined foods, we know they are poison for our society. That is the reason why we are getting heart attacks at ages of 25 and 26 or even 23. The youngest we had was 18 years old. We thought we'd try and check whether it was a familial hypercholesterolemia, but it wasn't. So we need to start early. We need to clearly have, a lot of us. We also need to understand that at the present time, in terms of total health care, almost 60% is provided by the private sector. So the private sector and the government and the policymakers, everybody needs to, the recommendations or the things have to be very clear. At age 18, actually 18 is also very late. For prevention, you have to go to the school level. So in fact, I suggested to the government that at Saptajan, we will adopt, say, 15 schools which are there around Delhi. And 1 hour every month, the doctor's team goes and they talk to the children. They are quite recipient. They are quite creative. They do listen, and they are the ones who are going to bring about the change. Then we also need to make recommendations in terms of the family time. Everybody wants a me time now. Nobody wants family time. So you have 5 people sitting and they are the only exercise they're doing is with their fingers on the mobile. So we need to take care of that.
Very, very valid point. I think it's very important to build the capacity of adolescents, as you say, as a change agent. I think not only at the school level, but at the family level and later at the community level. So it is important to inculcate those habits, healthy habits, which can be there at the school level. So maybe coming back to the Dr. Praveen Chandra, what roles do therapy choices, adherence, and patient education play in improving the outcomes?
Yeah, as I already said that, the challenges in therapy acceptance, of course, some of the myths which should be removed from people's mind in a very systematic way, because they have been put into their minds in a very systematic way, and for various reasons, through newspaper, through television, etc., that taking these medicines is dangerous. So it is important for people to understand that medicines are important if they are given for the right indication, especially as we are talking today of prevention of cardiac diseases and prevention of heart attacks, prevention of untimely deaths, young deaths which are happening because of cardiovascular diseases in these people. Because many times people will ask, there was certain news that suddenly somebody was very active, he dropped it. Why this happened? Could this have been prevented? The answer is yes. The only problem is that they never got checked, and even if it was checked, no action was taken at that time. And even if the advice was given, he didn't follow it because he thought that it is probably not so important to take that medication or do lifestyle change in his lifestyle. So for medications, for control of blood pressure, as Dr. Ganesh was mentioning, control of lipids, LDL cholesterol, stoppage of smoking, and of course other risk factors has to be done to prevent cardiovascular problems. Because most of the times people are only taking medicines when they have a heart problem, when they are diagnosed to have a heart problem. The challenge is to start it before it happens. The challenge is to prevent a heart attack. So people sitting here, many people will have a heart attack at some point in time because there is now an app which is available from the European Society of Cardiology. It is also freely available, and it is also available on the ACC. This is the American Cardiovascular Society, which is free app where you can calculate your 10-year risk or a lifetime risk of having a heart problem in future. That is very simple. We have to just feed 2-3 things. One, your age, your blood pressure, if taken once in life. Second is the cholesterol level. Third is the cholesterol level, and that's all. And also which part of the world you belong to. That's all. And it will give you a 10-year risk or a lifetime risk. And based on that, you can understand what kind of risk you have. So it is not something which happens suddenly to anybody. As people say that he was doing fine, he was running around, and suddenly he dropped it. Because nothing was done to prevent that at the right time. So prevention, as we are talking today, is the most important thing. And prevention will not only happen with just diet control and doing some yoga. It is also medications which is important if required. And we are not pushing medications, but we are saying that if it is required, please take it. And in proper doses, that is also very important, which people do not understand. And I'm saying this again and again because this is a real problem. Because I'm dealing with this, we are dealing with this problem on a daily basis. And most of the times, when after the heart attack, after 3-4 months, he'll say, "Oh, I have reduced the medicine because my family doctor said, probably you can now reduce it. I'm having some, weakness and things like that by taking this medicine." And I also read somewhere in the Google that it leads to liver problem or to mental problem, like memory loss is also one very common thing which people say. So I think all those things have to be really removed from their minds, and you tell them that if you want to live another year or good many years of life, please take the medicines in proper dosages. And statins is one of the most important medications. There is nothing which will harm you in that. Of course, everything has a side effect which needs to be checked, and that is why it should be taken with the guidance of the physician or a cardiologist or whatever. So that is something which has to be kept in mind. And of course, the newer set of medications, the only problem is that the statins are now reasonably, I will say cheap, not, and many of them are also, if the generic version you buy, it is even cheaper, so it is not so expensive anymore. Although when actually statins started, everybody started saying, who can take this medicine? I mean, people would say that, why are you talking about this? This is such expensive medicine. But now we realize it actually saves lives. So it is important to take it. The only problem with the newer medication, which is the injection, is it is very expensive right now. It is costing about, I think, 1 lakh a year or something like that, 90,000. 1 lakh, because they're getting 1+1. So it is about 90,000 to 1 lakh a year. But certainly, if it is required to someone, he should know that this is something which is available. And we are fortunate, I must say, we are fortunate in India today that every technology is available for treatment, every medicine is available for treatment, and it is not that time, like when we were very small, maybe in school, Sometimes you would hear that there was somebody who is very rich and who is very influential is sick somewhere and some doctor is coming from abroad or some medicine is being flown in for his treatment. It is not existing anymore. And also I must say that nobody is flying out of India for any treatment anymore. Cardiac problem. My father got his angioplasty done in 1986 out of India because there was nothing available. And today, nobody has to fly out of India for any cardiac treatment, whether it is bypass surgery or angioplasty or any medicine also. So that is a very fortunate situation. So we should take advantage of this and keep our society healthy as much as possible.
Thank you so much. And lastly, I think we have just covered the time, but maybe quickly if I can ask Dr. Ganesh Kumar, what role data guidelines or the public-private partnerships play in achieving all this, what we are talking as a gap or challenges?
I'll take very quick. First time when we data why it is very important in order to first marry that particular problem. In 2017, we conducted a city monitoring survey. First time we came to know that nearly 70% of the high blood pressure are unknown. Number two, less than 1 in 10 of those people with high blood pressure are under control. It says that 90% of them are uncontrolled, leading to heart attacks and stroke in the future. Number two, first time we generated a data about the availability of the drugs. First time we introduced hypertension protocol drugs in many of the states. Many states have procured for the first time in this during our implementation. Third important data is that follow-up of these patients. What we found is that over the follow-up period, what we could achieve, we could have demonstrated it. In 2017, when we did a baseline survey, the unknown hypertension was nearly 50% in 9 districts. And in 2024, when we completed the survey, we found that it has reduced to 45%. The control rate has increased to nearly 8%. What is a low-hanging fruit? We came to know is that there are people who are aware, but they are untreated. There are people who are aware and treated, but they are uncontrolled. The same goes for LDL also. We found that huge amount of them were untreated and they are not having a good metabolic control, which has a LDL component into it. Very happy to hear that from the cardiologist and cardiothoracic surgeon that because there's a huge amount of a myth around the statins, a huge amount of the myth around even taking blood pressure drugs and oral hypoglycemic agents. We need to demystify all those myths together. A good capacity building, and of course, we have come up with a strong policy to include into the protocols. All these things favors public-private partnership. The most important part is that we share a lot of common learnings, cross collaborations. The true scale only when it comes when there is a collaboration between public and private partnership. That's what I mean.
Very, very important points. I think what has been come up as a major recommendation for this discussion, translating the evidence-based, I think the data, it's quite an integrative approach where you can have contextualized actions and guidelines which can be adopted at the national level. But there is a need for joint efforts, not across the stakeholders, as you would say, maybe at the policy level, at the clinical level, but also at the vision where we can build the capacities and can have a task shifting where we can strengthen the primary care and especially at the rural and the semi-urban areas. So with this, I think it is very important when we have a monitoring system creating a coordinated and sustainable framework for an effective cholesterol management at the national level. With this, I would like to thank all the panelists for their. Please, I think maybe we have questions, please.
We have to go. We have to follow guidelines. My two questions, if you allow me to ask you: do wearable devices help in real time detecting the issues, medical issues? There is one question. Second question: you asked for the medical checkup. The question where to go? There are more than 3 lakh diagnostic centers, labs are in India, and hardly not even 10%, if you allow me to say, not even 10% are being accredited with the NMPI because it is voluntary and not the mandate. So there should be some law to restrict student conditions should be there that they have to be registered with some regulatory bodies to maintain the standard. That's it.
So,
NABL accreditation at the present time is, it's not mandatory, it is, recommended, and it has to be voluntary. What can the government do? What the government can do is, if you are NABL accredited, you get higher payment as compared to those who are not NABL accredited. And if you look at the government recommendations now, that has already been done. If you look at the CGHS, the Central Government Health Service recommendations, there are differential payments for NABL and likewise NABH accredited hospitals versus those who are not. Okay, and that spreads across the board. That spreads not just in town, A category towns, but also in B and C category towns. So there is a differential payment. That is how it can be. You make it mandatory to become NABL accredited place. The pathology labs themselves are going to say that they don't have. I mean, so that particular answer is pretty clear.
Even the star rating should be improved.
Star ratings are also going to come in place. Gradually, star ratings are something which are harder to implement. They are harder to implement, and that's the reason there is a little bit of an issue in that. Now, having said that, the second part was wearables. The wearables, they have been, my friend Anil Saxena is there. He's an electrophysiologist. Aditya is also an electrophysiologist. So, while there is a lot of, the cost to benefit ratio in terms of wearables doesn't come that way. Wearables, I mean, an Apple Watch or something like that, which can determine your arrhythmias. Multifunctional wearables are still not there to a large extent. So the Apple Watch started a arrhythmia detecting kind of thing. Almost 5.5 lakh people they put on in normal population. So the pickup rate, the number of people who came out with treatable arrhythmias is very, very small. It's very, very small. So the cost to benefit ratio at the present time certainly does not. We're not talking of secondary prevention again. There are some wearables, ambulatory, ECG recorders, and we have long-term ECG recorders, long-duration ECG recorders. Those are different. Those are different variables. So we are not talking about that. So on population basis, or recommending on a general population basis, variables cannot be recommended. And the third thing, the executive checkups. They have been more hyped than they have benefits. If I'm sure Aditya would agree with me on that, if you are, because we come from a similar background, we come from a public hospital. So if your blood pressure is all right, if your sugars are all right, and if your lipids are all right, by and large, you don't need anything more. There's a burgeoning population of people with chronic kidney disease, so one might add renal functions to that. You don't need fancy tests. You don't need calcium scoring for every single soul. So you build up on that and you encourage your people to keep these simple things normal. On an individual basis, I'm very anxious about myself. I'm a young chap. I want to know what will happen to me. That's a different category. But on a population basis, we've been talking on what the government should do or what the government should recommend. The simple things are good enough to keep you fit. There's no need to undergo. I mean, people come up with the stupid observations, as I see globally. My doctor has said you have to get a treadmill test done every year. I mean, bureaucrats come to IAS officers who say such and such person said the treadmill has to be done every year. Some will even repeat their nuclear scans, not remembering that they're getting radiation. So the actual basic things are very simple. On a population basis, only those can be implemented. On an individual basis, it depends upon how much one wants to look into oneself. But also remember that trying to detect what is not there or what is not obvious is something that is going to cause you more anxiety. There's another group of people that we see now who are called cardiac neurotics. The doctor did not find anything in me, so we went and did this advanced test. There is a tiny fault in that. Can I die because of that? I went for the executive checkup. My treadmill is positive. My doctor is saying, we don't take your guarantee once you move out of the hospital. So you get your angiography done right now. We don't take into consideration our informed decisions.
So major issues.
Sir, can I please interrupt? Your questions are very powerful and they are generating a powerful response. But the time is really no, sir. I have to unfortunately stop this. Please, Dr. Bansal is going to be addressing another session after this. We don't want to break him completely. Thank you so much, Dr. Rahul, for really bringing out the best. And thank you, sir, for bringing out such insights from Dr. Bansal. I invite you to please hand over a small token of our gratitude to our panelists here. Please, ma'am. Starting with Dr. Bansal. If you can hand over this to Dr. Bansal, please.
Let's have a round of applause for our speakers for this amazing discussion. Dr. Praveen Chandra. Dr. Dr. P. Ganesh Kumar. We were expecting Dr. Praful Sharma. We wanted him to be here.
And if I could please invite Dr. Nishchint to step up and hand over a memento to Dr. Rahul here for bringing out the best in the panelists here. Thank you. If we can all be together for this group picture. So ladies and gentlemen, in the interest of time, we unfortunately had to cut this short, and of course, so much insight that came under this particular session. But we promise you that there is much more lined up for you today. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Now moving on to our next segment of the day is a session on diabetes and heart and how a pill is changing the future. The session is partnered by Novo Nordisk, and for this we have our presenter here, none other than Dr. Sandeep Bansal, Director VMMC and Safdarjung Hospital, who will shed light on how a pill is changing the future. We welcome you, sir. Thank you. Let's welcome him with a round of applause.
Good morning. Actually, as a teacher, I teach MBBS students also and MD students also, and I also teach my DM students. So somebody asked me, who are the most difficult to teach? So I said the MBBS students are the most difficult to teach. So as I see this crowd is not everybody is a medical doctor, so it is going to be tough for me to talk about this extremely. This is like what we call a journal club in our medical parlance. Every week, every teaching institution has a journal club. So this is essentially a journal club which talks of a specific pill, which has done a great job in some ways. The time allotted to me was actually 20 minutes. So kindly increase my time to 20 minutes and not 10 minutes. I'll try to be as simple as possible, but at the same time, the facts are going to remain facts. So this is something. This is a new concept. I'm a cardiologist, so are some of my colleagues here. We have people from different specialties. We have endocrinologists who look after diabetes, and we have, kidney specialists or nephrologists, as we call them. And for a long time, we believe we have a tunnel vision. As a cardiologist, I see only cardiology, and I think everything is related to heart. My nephrology thinks it's everything related to nephrology. But now there's a convergence happening. This is a recommendation from the American Heart Association, which basically talks of cardiovascular, kidney, and metabolic continuum. So the three, actually happen hand in hand. They happen together. That's the basic point which is raised in this slide. And as we can see to the left, you can prevent it by what is called as essential 8, something that is, often talked about but seldom followed, which basically refers to taking dietary precautions, doing some good bit of exercise, monitoring your blood pressure, etc. And sleep. Sleep is an extremely important component of this. But as you go towards the right, you find that obesity comes in. Much to our chagrin, obesity is an epidemic in our own country also. There have been recent news reports, there have been recent articles which talk of 1 in 5 school children being obese. Obesity gives way to diabetes and hypertension, which is the stage 2. And then you start having, subclinical syndromes or abnormalities which are detected by tests before you actually have full-blown complex heart, kidney, and diabetes taking place together, and it is shown on the right side. Now, we also know, so as I said, that we have risk factors. We have risk factors like high blood pressure, we have diabetes, we have lipids that we had a lot of talk about, and we have obesity. These are important risk factors. They lead to obesity particularly leads to insulin resistance, which can cause dyslipidemia, which means bad lipids. It can cause diabetes, and together they lead to inflammation in the body, and they lead to the complications which are shown on the extreme right of the slide. So we have a very important group of drugs which are called the GLP-1 receptor agonists. Please remember that there is in our body, in our pancreas, there are what we call as GLP-1 receptors. When we eat food, we have some endogenous agonists, which means that they will activate those receptors. We have endogenous ones, but they are very short lasting. So these drugs, they go and sit on those GLP-1 receptors. So that is why they are called agonists. This, releases a cascade of reactions within the cells, and that leads to higher insulin secretion, which is the glucose lowering hormone, and a lower glucagon secretion, which is the glucose raising hormone. So in simple words, that is how the GLP-1 receptor agonists help, and they help by controlling the glucose, which is HbA1c, causing body weight reduction, giving you cardiovascular benefits, which are being highlighted on the right side. And they act through different organ systems. They act through the brain, decreasing the satiety. They act on the liver, making it healthier. They act on the kidney, preventing kidney damage. They act on blood vessels to increase the blood flow, and they stabilize the plaques. They stabilize the plaques means they prevent heart attacks, and they also reduce inflammation. what are the what are the problems with our own population? We know that as compared to global population, we have almost 2 to 4 times higher risk. And if you compare to the population which is in the East, the Japanese and the Chinese, it is 6 to 12 times. It was already highlighted 10 years. I would say we are actually almost 15 to 20 years earlier as compared to the Western population. And 1/3 of the people who have diabetes of any duration, they are bound to develop heart problems. And more than 50% of Indians who are more than 50 years of age and have diabetes have heart problems. We also understand that diabetes is such a problem in India that 1 out of 5 diabetics have a problem which has been highlighted here. They have peripheral arterial disease, which means less blood going to their legs. They have angina, or they have a heart attack, or they have a stroke, or they develop heart failure. One of these 5 or 6 things occurs in 1 out of 5 diabetics within 5 years of the diagnosis. So that is the kind of problem we are looking at. And the important thing is that this class of medicine has come up in last about 8 to 10 years, and they have been rapidly recommended by almost all the bodies, whether they are cardiac bodies or they are diabetes or endocrinology bodies. Now, while this is known to give you cardiovascular benefits, the important thing is the drugs on the right side. If we see, the most commonly used drug in diabetics is metformin, which is about 85% of people, rightfully so. It has to be metformin which has to be used. The GLP-1 receptor agonists, which are again recommended, we don't have the clear numbers so far. Very, very minuscule population is on GLP-1 receptor agonists. The SGLT2 inhibitors is another class of drugs which make glucose go through the urine and pass out in your urine. That is the way they act. So they are used in less than 5% of diabetics. These 2 classes on the top, they are the most preferred anti-diabetic classes of anti-diabetic drugs, but they are used in a woefully small number of patients. As I said, they are recommended across the globe now by cardiac, even renal, the KD2 has been mentioned here, and the diabetes guidelines to mitigate the risk of cardiovascular events. See, we need to understand that 75% of diabetics do not die because of diabetes. They don't die because of sugar. They die because of cardiovascular problems. 75% of that. So that will include a heart attack, that will include a stroke, and that would include peripheral arterial disease. We must have heard about so many people, having to get their legs amputated or their fingers, the fingers of the limbs amputated. That's peripheral arterial disease. Less blood is going to go to the peripheral arteries. So the second commonest drug after metformin, which is recommended, was what a category of drugs we call as DPP-4 inhibitors. And these are used in about 60% of diabetics in our country. But the point is that they are not protective. They are not benefiting you in any way. And this has been, I can talk about it, but I don't see a point. Suffice to say that they do not benefit you beyond the control of sugar. Whereas, if you make a comparison, when you compare the GLP-1 receptor agonists that we are talking about, there are absolutely clear benefits across the board, including all-cause mortality, which means your chances of dying are almost 35% less if you use a GLP-1 receptor agonist as compared to the most popular category of drugs that are being used. We also need to understand that despite using so many anti-diabetic drugs, there is a lot of what we call as residual cardiovascular risk, which means you use the drug, but in spite of that, the risk remains. And these are again slightly technical matters, but there is a residual obesity risk, there is a residual risk of diabetes, there is a residual lipid risk, and also thrombotic risk. All these cause a higher number of heart attacks and cardiovascular. So, the important thing is that although this drug has been clearly in use as an injectable, a weekly injection, it is now available in the form of tablet. And this is a trial which was done, which is called the SOUL trial, close to about 9,500 patients, and about 8% of the total number of patients were from India, about 800 patients. And in this, there was a category of patients who were given semaglutide, which is a GLP-1 receptor agonist, and the controls were not given this particular drug, but they were given standard of care. Whatever medicines are to be given, they were given. And there was a clear control. The features have been highlighted here. Nearly 70% of them were males, and the patients were about 25% of the population. They were obese people. The mean BMI, as we see here, is 31. But the important thing is that almost 90% of them had hypertension. So this was the category of drugs. So who were the people on whom this trial was done? They had diabetes. They had a complication of diabetes. It could be a heart problem. It could be a kidney problem. And to those 10,000 patients or 9,500 patients, half of them were given the drug, half of them were not given the drug. So this shows the different complications that were there in different groups, and almost 45% of them had renal problems also. What was seen was that concomitant medicines or accompanying medicines were given in almost equal numbers in all the patients. And what we find is that there is a significant 14% reduction in what we, in medical parlance, we call it as a 3-point MACE, adverse cardiovascular events. So they included death due to heart attack, non-fatal heart attack, or a non-fatal stroke. So this was decreased by about 14% in all these patients. There was the important thing, as I said, the major benefit of this class of drugs has been decreasing the chances of having a heart attack. And there was a 26% reduction in the heart attacks. In the Asians and in those whose controls were bad, the average HbA1c in Indian population is about 8.5. And so those people who had a bad HbA1c, a bad diabetes control, there was even greater benefits. And as far as the kidney benefit was concerned, there was a clear kidney benefit. And as we can see that the estimated treatment difference was almost 60%, which means that whether you use this drug or not use this drug, there was a clear kidney benefit also. And again, this talks of the kidney benefit once again. And as far as as I said, there are two important categories of drugs. One is the GLP-1 receptor agonist, and the other is SGLT2 inhibitors. And this highlights the two different groups and what are the modes of actions of these two different groups. The evidence suggests that if you combine these two categories of drugs, the management of diabetics is more effective and their cardiovascular mortality is reduced together. And if we compare with giving this combination versus either of these drugs, we see that there is almost a 30% decrease in the heart events, and there is almost a 30 to 60% decrease in terms of the kidney problems. So these, as I said, the three occur together: cardiovascular, kidney, and diabetes. So because of diabetes, if you use these drugs, there is a 1/3 decrease in the cardiovascular problems, and there is about a 30 to 60% decrease in the renal problems. There's been a lot of there have been a lot of other studies which have been done, close to 2,000 patients, and they again show that if you use a combination of these drugs rather than one drug alone, there is a clear benefit. And even all-cause mortality or the chances of dying. See, these are drugs which actually decrease the chances of a diabetic from dying as compared to the people who don't get these particular medicines. Again, these are technical things, but again, suffice to say that this combination is beneficial for the kidneys, and it is also beneficial in terms of the heart or the cardiovascular events. And the combination, as I said, if you consider these people over a period of 5 years, so you study these people, you see how many died in the next 5 years. There is a significant mortality difference if you use the combination of these two important drugs. And when added together, they cause a greater weight loss, and they also cause a greater, better control of diabetes. And they can be very comfortably added to metformin, which I said is used in almost 85% of the diabetics in the country. If we talk of pharmacological remission, when do we say there is a remission of diabetes? When your HbA1c or 3-monthly average sugar is less than 6.5. So that is again achieved in much higher number of patients, almost in half of the patients, if you use this particular combination. So risk of heart attack is reduced, the risk of stroke is reduced, and if we look at the broad actions in terms of reduction of cardiovascular death, both are beneficial. In reduction of stroke and heart attack, the SGLT2 inhibitor, the GLP-1 receptor agonists are beneficial. And in terms of reducing heart failure, the SGLT2 inhibitors are beneficial. So we need to understand that this particular category of drugs, whether given orally or in injectable form, is better. The important thing is, why are we talking about this oral drug in a common public parlance? The injectable therapies are generally accepted by only 10% of the people who are ready to accept the oral medications. This is if you are giving a daily injection. So people have studied, if you want to give insulin, only 10% of people would want insulin or accept insulin as a form of therapy. This is, of course, a weekly injection. The acceptance must be higher, but the exact differences are not known for this weekly injection. So, to summarize, we need to understand that when we use these two classes of drugs, we benefit the heart, we benefit the kidneys, we help our patients have lesser heart attacks, and we let them live long. I thank you for your time. If there are any questions, I can take them, but I don't know, I try to make it as simple as possible.
I'll invite Pinky from BUH. Sir, if you could please be with us, I'm inviting Pinky ma'am from BUH to please, we wish to offer a small token of our gratitude to you, sir. Thank you so much. So with this, I think the conversation that we are continuing, we would want to get into straight away our next discussion. And this next one that we are getting on is very, very critical because this is a condition that is truly now becoming dominant in our country, actually becoming very strong in our country, and which is the hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. And this next panel that we are diverging into will deep dive into this condition. Furthermore, and of course, we'll have many insights for this undiagnosed heart issue that we will be talking about. Now, in this case, I would now want to start by inviting our panelists on the stage. To begin with, I invite Dr. Upendra Kaur, who is the Chairman for Cardiology and Dean for Academics and Research at the Bhatta Hospital and Medical Research Institute. I will invite you to please join us, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, continue your thunderous applause as I also welcome Dr. K. Madan Gopal, Advisor and Head for Public Health Administration, NSRC, Government of India. I invite you, sir, to please join us. I would continue by inviting Dr. Anil Saxena, Director for Cardiac Pacing and Electrophysiology for Fortis Escorts Heart Institute. May I please invite Dr. Professor Narendra Nath Khanna, Founder and Chairman for Asia Pacific Vascular Society and Senior Consultant at the Indraprastha Apollo Hospital. And let me also invite Dr. Ram Khandelwal, CEO and Founder for Heart Health India Foundation, to please join us as well. Now, this session we would wish to start by inviting Dr. Kaul. Dr. Kaul, if you can join us for your opening remarks before we set the tone and get into the panel, which will be later moderated by Dr. Madan Gopal.
Good afternoon, friends. We're going to talk about a condition which is very often not recognized and or under-recognized. It's very important. So this is called hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. Basically, hypertrophy means when the muscle is thicker than the normal muscle. Cardiomyopathy means you don't know the cause of it. It's not because of high blood pressure. It's not because of any valve disease, but it is, kind of, we don't understand why it is. Now, this is the picture. On the left side, you see a normal heart. And as you can see here, so you can see the normal heart, right ventricle and the left ventricle. Obviously, on the left side of the left ventricle, the septum is dividing the two, and as you can see, the septum is less thick than the lateral wall, than the left one. But on the right side, and then you see the histology, that is the section under the microscope of the same muscle, and this is the normal muscle texture. Many of you may not understand, but you can see that there is a nucleus. Anybody who has gone through biology classes will know there is a nucleus, and then it's surrounded by a homogeneous kind of a red muscle. Then on the right side is hypertrophic cardiomyopathy heart, where you can see the thickness of the muscle of both the septum, which is dividing, as well as the lateral wall, is much thicker than normal. And in fact, the septum is thicker than the lateral wall. It's also called asymmetrical septal hypertrophy. That means it's not symmetrical. Septum is thicker. And if you see the histology behind, just below it, you would see totally bizarre kind of a muscle. Disarray, what we call it. Total disarray in the muscle fibers. They're not like on the left side, smooth, well defined. You can see so many fibers there, and they're all grossly hypertrophic muscle, thicker. Now, it is one of the most common cardiomyopathies. Cardiomyopathy means when the heart muscle is diseased. And this is one of the most common cardiomyopathies, but very often remains unrecognized. That is the reason I think this has been given as a special topic for you. You're not doctors, maybe some of you are going to become doctors later. So, but this is to be recognized that it is expected, or it is estimated that 1 in 200 to 1 in 500 people roaming around in the streets has hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. That means 80 to 90% of the people with this problem remain undiagnosed. And this is further divided into two types. One is obstructive hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. That means the muscle is thick, is also producing an obstruction. Obstruction at the level from where the blood goes into the blood tube, the aorta. So the pressure in the ventricle is higher than the aorta. Normally it's the same. If your cuff blood pressure is 120, the pressure in the left ventricle is also 120. But here what happens, the ventricular pressure is much higher than the pressure beyond it. And half of the obstructive cardiomyopathies have, half of the cardiomyopathies of hypertrophy have obstruction. And the pressure gradient is 30 millimeters or more than 30. And we already told you that the ventricular septal thickness is much more than the peripheral wall. And with that, you see the capacity of the ventricle is reduced. It is so hypertrophic that it encroaches upon the volume of the left ventricle. The cavity size becomes low. The other variety, which is not so common, is called non-obstructive hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, where the wall thickness is there, but there is no gradient, there is no pressure. So what's the problem in this? On the left side, you see the normal muscle. And muscle, when it contracts, there is always actin myosin bridge. As you can see on the left, many of these actin myosin bridges are sleeping. They are not touching from septum to the wall. They are just squeezing 40 to 50%. And that is a normal contraction. But what happens in hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, these sarcomeres, that is the fibers which are joining actin and myosin, you can see that many of them which are sleeping are also awake, and they are connecting the muscles, the septum with the posterior wall, and 15 to 20% of only sleeping, others are all active. But what happens because of that? The ventricle starts contracting very powerfully, it relaxes very slowly, and the cardiac tissue becomes stiff, it becomes very stiff, and later this is going to become fibrosis, that means going to become hard, and these muscle fibers are replaced by fibrous tissue, which is hard. Now, very often this runs in families. This is very important to understand that if you suspect a person to have hypertrophic cardiomyopathy and it is diagnosed, it's very important to screen the family, because many such families will have totally asymptomatic, no symptoms at all, but have hypertrophic cardiomyopathy which is getting occurred. So it is what is called an autosomal dominant deficiency. If it is there, it passes on to the progeny much more frequently than you expect. Now, it's a chronic progressive disease. It may be totally asymptomatic today, but over a period of time, it becomes more and more apparent because the person starts getting symptoms like shortness of breath or giddiness or sometimes syncope. So it changes the heart structure, and as you can see on the right once again, it's a normal heart and then hypertrophic cardiomyopathy with left ventricular hypertrophy. It also sometimes affects the mitral valve, the valve which separates the atrium from the ventricle on the left side is the mitral valve. So it affects that and it starts leaking. And I already told you the cells of the muscle change. The muscle becomes totally disorganized, or it's called disorder. 20 to 40% of these patients can get into heart failure. And this is based upon large data of 3 trials. Then arrhythmias, irregularities of heartbeats are common in them. If you do a 24 hours monitoring in them, many of you must remember the Holter monitor, you put in a monitor, it goes on recording your ECG for 24 hours, you'll find a 5 to 35% of them you will find abnormal beats. And one of the important arrhythmias is atrial fibrillation, in which the atrium, the upper portion of the heart, becomes totally chaotic in contraction. And that leads to a lot of palpitations, and that can also lead to clot formation in the left atrium and stroke. And some of them develop even more serious arrhythmia, which can lead to death. Ventricular tachycardia. It may start as non-sustained ventricular tachycardia, 5 or 6 beats of irregularity and then stops. But then if it continues like that, then the cardiac contraction becomes ineffective. A patient can fall down because the output from the heart is reduced. And then stroke can happen. 4 to 10% of the persons in some retrospective studies have shown that they develop a paralytic heart. Although sudden cardiac death is uncommon, less than 1% of them develop sudden cardiac death, but this has been a very important cause of the patient with hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, and it is 3 to 4 times more than general population. So that's very important to understand that you should not scare the person, but at the same time, this particular person runs at a higher risk of dying suddenly. And that usually happens in younger patients with hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. Their shortness of breath as a common symptom, lightheadedness, it runs in the families, and if you listen to their heart, the murmurs are there and they change the postures. In a squatting position, more prominent, in a standing position, less prominent. That is because of the filling of the heart becomes different in these two. When the ventricle is distended, a lot of blood in it, the obstruction or the obstruction reduces, and when the ventricle is reduced in volume, the murmur increases. ECG is very frequently abnormal. Although a normal ECG does not rule it out, but very often an ECG is abnormal. So if you see an ECG of a person which is abnormal, and in fact these days on the ECG graph only is written normal graph, abnormal graph. If it's abnormal graph, this condition should be kept in mind. Then we have hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. And then the diagnosis actually is clinched by doing an investigation called echocardiogram, ultrasound of the heart, which will clearly show the ventricle, the size, the channels. And then we told you about the symptoms and signs. Always may be always abnormal. And then sometimes we do provocative measures to produce this gradient. So evaluation of this gradient, you ask the person to perform Valsalva maneuver or something like you breathe against those blocks, or make the patient sit down, squat, ask him to stand, and then you do the echo again, and then you see the gradient. So these provocative tests will not go into the details, but they can unmask obstruction. And it is amenable to treatment. Beta blockers, which are very commonly used drugs like propranolol, metoprolol, are very good drugs for them. Easily available. There are some people who cannot tolerate them, in that the heart rate lowering calcium blockers like, verapamil, isoptin, diazepam, which if patient cannot tolerate beta blockers can be given. And then there's a drug called diisopyramide, Norpace, which again is non-specific, but it reduces the contraction of the heart. Anything which reduces the contraction of the heart, improves it. And then there are some patients who continue to have symptoms. In that there are some procedures, inject some alcohol into the artery, supplying the septum, and make a small localized heart attack in that region. Over which the ventricle contracts, reduces. And then surgery is one of the things, you dissect out the muscle. And then there's a drug which has recently been launched in the Indian market also, I think, in the last few weeks only, called mavacamten, which acts against and acts upon the actin myosin coupling, which I told you is abnormal. It makes it quiescent, and the actin myosin cross is reduced, the hydrogen contractility is reduced, relaxation becomes better, energy consumption of the heart reduces, and the wall space reduces. So there are some guidelines for the treatment. You see, first of all, you diagnose the condition. If you diagnose the condition, then whether the patient has symptoms or not, you start them on beta blockers, which you already mentioned, or calcium blockers. And if the patient's symptoms still persist, then you can give them drugs like diisopyramide or subject them to alcohol ablation, or now that this new drug, mavacamten, is available, you give that drug. And these are the guidelines both from European side and American side. So what are the key points? Just to summarize what I talked about, and we'll be discussing it briefly. It's a complex heterogeneous disorder, not explained by abnormal loading, not because of high blood pressure, not because of valve disease, aortic valve disease. Yet the muscle is sick. Approximately 3/4 of them have obstruction, which is subaortic muscular obstruction. And this obstruction, if it is not there, can be provoked by some maneuvers. The ejection fraction, the power of the contraction is very high, and therefore normally we say 55, 60, normal there we use 75, 80% ejection fraction, because heart is contracted very powerful. Patient may be symptomatic or asymptomatic. Symptomatic patients can have all kinds of symptoms, heart failure, angina, walking, he cannot walk because he gets short of breath, and then extreme sudden cardiac. Echocardiography, cardiac imaging is very important, it diagnoses it, like echocardiography, or you must have heard the investigation MRI, they're all gold standard tests to pick it up. The prognosis is generally improved by proven therapies, which I already mentioned, which repeated many times. Beta blockers, calcium channel blockers, cardiac myosin inhibitors like mavacamten, and the very high risk patients who have got a heart muscle which is very thick, more than 30 millimeters. Normally, as I told you, 1.3, 1.5, but 30 millimeters, 40 millimeters, young persons, they are very prone to sudden cardiac death. They can be given defibrillators, like a pacemaker, a defibrillator implanted there, and in case this happens, it's life-saving. It gives a shock and the person is alive. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Panchal. So, over to you, sir. Thank you. After hearing Dr. Kaur, like all the signs and symptoms, I was just wondering, because as I was discussing this topic with my son, who's also a doctor, he was saying that the most of the things which now sudden deaths which have been attributed, we don't know for what cause it has been attributed. One of the underlying cause could be this SCM. So that's the kind of thought process which is going on in the young adults. So we have been all attributing this, some of the causes attributed to this to SCM. Post-COVID, we have been attributing to that, but that kind of scenario is there. But most of the time, as a public health person, we often find that it's undiagnosed. If you talk about the stats and other things, we have a prevalence of around 2 to
around 7 million cases in India. That's an estimate based on the global standards. But are we able to capture all these things? The age prevalence we talk about, it can occur in every age, but by the time the person reaches 40, then only we are able to find out the person is having SCM or not. So that kind of delay is there, diagnostic gap is there. So how you can address this diagnostic gap? And as we discussed, as we have set the context for the discussion, I will be just quickly going to Dr. Nils Saxena here, because it is all related to what Dr. Paul has presented. That means, what are the early signs of hypertrophic cardiomyopathy that doctors and the patients often overlook? Because I just cite an example. Common problem is hypothyroidism. It's often underdiagnosed because if the patient is not knowing, if the doctor is not knowing, he's not fully aware, he's not conscious about that, he often misses it.
Very true. I think it's a very important question, and as lies in the fact that not many physicians have a high index of suspicion for HCM. What we see is that I'm an electrophysiologist, we get a lot of referrals for HCM. And what we have seen is that the main reason for referral in India is when somebody has an abnormal ECG, which is detected on routine pre-operative checkup or insurance checkup, and then patient is referred for echocardiography and there it is. That is one common mode of referral. The other case is detected is when the patient becomes very symptomatic. So late referrals and late diagnosis is quite common in our country in HCM. The third would be a patient who is diagnosed because of family history of a next case. Now that unfortunately is not very prevalent in India. And the Western cohort of patients are diagnosed early because of family screening, but we have this problem. Another issue is that the symptoms are often and illness attributed other things like somebody may have mild breathlessness or exertion or fatigue or some pre-symptom. Yeah, we see a lot of patients getting their symptoms misattributed to other conditions and like obesity or some other problem. And often patients with these symptoms, they have their neurological investigations done like MRI and CT scan and not looked at. Even our echocardiographer sometimes they're more focused on ejection fraction. Everybody is busy and they do 50 studies in a day. And so they're more focused on ejection fraction, valvular abnormalities. They often miss out on subtle abnormalities which may be present in some cases, like apical hypertrophy or concentrate forms are often missed out. Some patients may have only LA dilatation. So all these are reasons why sometimes you get missed.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Saxena, because one of the important things, unless you are having a higher degree of suspicion, you often tend to ignore all these kinds of conditions, and you have rightly echoed on that. I will come to Dr. Khanna. So, what role can multidisciplinary approach can play in improving early recognition in this condition?
So, once we have these patients of hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, it's very important that we sort of diagnose them and improve the diagnosis. And for that, as Dr. Saxena and Dr. Paul have said, an echocardiography actually changes the diagnosis, especially if you are suspecting this or there is a history of sudden death in the family, and you have a normal ECG and you have left ventricular hypertrophy with a lot of great ejection fraction. Now, once we diagnose this, there are some practical, we need to see whether it's obstructive or non-obstructive. If you have a resting gradient, the diagnosis is almost confirmed. If not, then we need to induce it. And this can be done by simple squatting to standing testing, or it can be done by a Valsalva maneuver, or if not, then you have to provoke with either low-dose dopamine or maybe an exercise testing or and sometimes when we do this, there is an issue that you should only do it if your operator is trained to do a dopamine or stress echo at 2 cm, and also if you have an emergency resuscitation facility. Now, apart from this, there is a multidisciplinary diagnostic requirement which is there. We need to not only check this, we also need to have a good imaging in terms of MRI. Where we actually look at the myocardium, and we must also have a geneticist in place who can actually diagnose the exact genetic abnormality and actually do a family counseling and look at the genetic disorders in the family, to look at or screen the people in the family who have this sort of a disease, maybe they are asymptomatic, and also look if there is been a history of sudden death in the family, and to screen these patients and actually follow these individuals over a period of time. So, in general, and we also need, if suppose if you have arrhythmia, which many of these patients, we subject them to extended group recordings or Holter. And if you have arrhythmia, especially two of them are common, atrial fibrillation and ventricular tachycardias or shock episodes of VT or DF. In these sort of situations, it's very important to have electrophysiologists in the entire management, because you can actually prevent sudden death in these patients. You can prevent stroke. You can give them timely defibrillators whenever required. So it's a multidisciplinary team, right from the diagnosis to screening and the treatment and follow-up. And that's what is required in this sort of disease.
Thank you, Dr. Khanna. And one of the important things which you have highlighted, the multidisciplinary team approach. The second thing, Dr. Saxena, you have mentioned about the early sign of this CM. But one of the important challenges still lies is that how to create awareness among the health providers. That means how they are aware about the multidisciplinary which are available. They are aware about the early signs and symptoms, but how to raise awareness about the health conditions. Dr. Kaur.
I think meetings like this are one of the very important forums to make people aware. And doctors are aware of it, but at the same time, when they're in their chambers, somehow these conditions are forgotten. So from time to time, anything unexplained which it comes, I think this thing should be kept in mind. As a student, an abnormal ECG when you see, it should never be disregarded as, well, this happens in young females, so we don't have that. No, try to find it out, take it seriously, and there's echocardiography widely available. So echocardiography should be promoted in such a person. And artificial intelligence can go a big way in this. Any ECG abnormal, you put it to an artificial intelligence, you compare it to thousands of millions of such ECG, and will pick it up. This looks like CM. So I think the future is bright, and the way we are going, screening has become easier, but the most important thing is suspicion. If you don't suspect anything, you won't see it.
One of the important things, because I remember my days when I was doing my internal medicine residency. So I worked there for 1 year because of other reasons. I discontinued that. One of the important things for our professor, Dr. M.P. Mishra, he used to say that to try to see the normal things. Make a habit of seeing all the normal signs, don't miss the normal things. Immediately, the moment you are used to seeing normal things, even a small abnormal things, you are able to pick it up. That means a higher degree of suspicion is coming. I will come to
Don't brush aside an abnormal.
So I will just come to Dr. Ram Khandelwal. Since HCM is a common yet often underdiagnosed disease, what initiative you suggest to undertake as a patient advocacy health foundation to increase public awareness? Before I give my comments, because I am also a part of the panelists, and but I was given the responsibility to moderate it also. I will give my comments afterwards. Please.
So I'll start by first telling that I'm not a doctor. I'm a patient advocate.
Because when we are working with the ministry, we usually say that doctor secretary also we call our doctor because they are dealing with doctors, so we always, as a flow of talk, we usually get them as doctor. That's all. So don't take it that you have taken doctor, but since you are working among the doctors, half of the doctors and half of the knowledge you are already having. So don't take it that way.
So I'll present the patient perspective. Since I'm a heart patient myself and I represent a community of heart patients. Let me first make a confession here. I was 33 when I had a heart attack, and the first symptoms which I had before a few months which presented, tiredness, dizziness, maybe feeling headaches and many other things. And it happens with a lot of us. but we don't take them seriously. And that's exactly the problem that we see in HCM patients. We confuse them with something else. We might have breathlessness, we might have dizziness, we might have tiredness, we might faint, but we will think that it's something which is very usual, maybe sometimes with acidity, with fatigue, and other things. And we don't get checked a lot of times. I think that's where a level of seriousness is required, a level of awareness is required that how we don't take breathlessness as normal. Breathlessness is not just breathlessness, it's a symptom of something serious, which could be HCM. A tiredness or a fatigue is not something usual. So we need to start thinking that it could be cardiomyopathy. And I think that's where the change begins, and that's where we need to start looking at that how we can early on identify. Because a lot of HCM cases which are symptomatic can be diagnosed early, but they are not diagnosed. It's hardly 5% of the cases globally which get diagnosed. So if we start early, if we do checkup early, and if we screen early, we can actually avoid a lot of fatalities. And in many cases where the symptoms are asymptomatic, the first symptom is people will collapse. So before that happens, and these are young athletes, young students, before that happens, if we are able to reach out to them, because incidence is not small, 1 in 250, that means almost all of us sitting here today, there might be a one HCM patient in this room. But because they have not been tested, we don't know. And I think that's where we need to bring the change.
Khandelwal, you have raised a very important observation because we are trying to raise awareness among the doctors. But likewise, like the general public should also be made aware that they should not be neglecting even a small episode of shortness of breath that needs to be investigated properly rather than relying on the ear groups and homemade remedies and other things. Because that add on to the problem. Because anything which is abnormal that needs to be sought an expert advice. That's the quite message which you are already echoing and other things. Besides that, I would just say that the role of the genetic testing, because we do have some program, the Department of this Nidan program is there where we are trying to make Nidan centers apart from linking with different centers so that in a hub and spoke model we can do genetic counseling and genetic testing. But one of the challenges which we are facing in the country right now is to having a trained genetic counselor as well as facilities for doing genetic screening. Because this is very high-end, genetic sequencing is very high-end diagnostic measure. But if we are able to do a proper screening, which we are trying to invest through our non-communicable disease program, where we are doing genetic screening. And you have seen the sickle cell screening also now genetic element has been added and Center for Excellence is now also coming up. But till the time that comes up, we have to see that how people are being aware and how we can build the capacity of our providers and make them aware so that they don't miss out the slightest number of cases as well. So with this, I think we will go to the next segment. I think the next segment is about the patient journey challenges. So I will be starting with Dr. again, introduce them. So why do patients experience delays in diagnosis even when symptoms are present, and how can clinicians address this? Because already there will be some repetitions. Because last session also we have touched upon this aspect. But please actually give some example that how they can be reduced. The time to diagnosis and the treatment that can be reduced. Give some examples.
Right. So it's a very important question, and as Professor Paul initially mentioned, that the symptoms of HCM are very diverse and very non-specific. So somebody may have breathlessness, chest discomfort, weight discomfort. Somebody may have pre-syncope, syncope. Patient may have atrial fibrillation, or even they may present first time with stroke because of atrial fibrillation, which is because of HCM. So we have a very diverse presentation. And the key is to have a high nexus of speech, as you mentioned earlier, and training of the healthcare professionals. Another reason is that the high quality imaging techniques, forget genetic, even high quality imaging techniques like MRI and echo, they are largely focused in this. So we don't have these facilities existing at a certain quality level in B type or B type cities, semi-urban or rural areas. And that is where a lot of patients get missed out. So there is a need to educate the doctors and even sonographers, echocardiographers about the HCM and how they can pick the disease early. And then, as you mentioned, the hub stroke model, we can refer some of these patients for genomic studies.
Okay, thank you, Professor Paul. So I think the same question is in different format. What structured hospital practices can help reduce the gap between the symptoms and the format?
See, if you go to any echo lab and look at their record of the last 1 month, you're going to pick up some. Patient has come from general ward for a clearance for hernia surgery. To do an echo, and then there will be a those are the patients who will pick up there. So I think from the hospital records, you have that, you call them back. And then if you're systematically looking for these people, out of 100, you might find 5 or 6 cardiomyopathies. Speech is very important because you pick up a case to a family and they will pick up more. And then sometimes, unrelated you ask, yes, my aunt died suddenly. She was something. So I think that is how one of the ways. Once again, it comes to suspicion. It will be all of us having again and again saying, you have to suspect. Whenever you are not able to make 2 into 2, 4, क्या बात है? It's simple. And seeing the prevalence 1 in 250, as Ram said, 1 out of the next year. Oh, we don't know. So suspect and then don't stop after diagnosis. This looks like send the person to a higher center for evaluation. And that's how we can. It comes to our way back to our clinical practice, where a lot of emphasis was given on taking history. And that aspect is now missing because we are all depending on our other support staff who are taking the history, building up the case record. And then when it comes to the doctor, we often neglect this aspect of family history. That way, family history is very important. That is, somebody having family history. I think that will at least address part of the issue. Then Professor Khanna, the same thing. So what are the main challenges after diagnosis, after managing this symptomatic patient after diagnosis?
So, if you look at the challenges first, the first challenge is the awareness and the diagnosis that we've already discussed. The second challenge is when we have a patient, how do you treat these patients? There is a problem at the awareness level among the physicians. People who start them on beta blockers or the calcium channel blockers, but those titration is not done properly. The lot of physicians would not, or the echocardiographers would not, know how to actually de-escalate or stop beta blockers before the operative testing. So that's one challenge from the patient's perspective. The other challenges are, some of them are asymptomatic. They will just leave the drug, not understanding that the risk of selling that they will leave the drug because of side effects, especially young people who are on beta blockers may have some sexual dysfunction, erectile dysfunction, they leave the drug. And then many physicians do not know how to escalate or how to add and the newer drugs like never. So these are different problems and challenges. Somebody is just going to put them on beta blocker and they just follow it up very casually. They don't do the whole monitoring. They don't involve the electrophysiology. They would not look for the risk of sudden cardiac death in these patients. They would actually not give them proper medication or ICD when it's required. And as Dr. Paul said, if you go retrospective on the history, you may find incidences of sudden cardiac death, and they are often missed, and these patients also lose life. And then again, when to escalate to the next level of drug, nevercamptin and all, which are very specific drugs. Again, this is a challenge in our day-to-day treatments. Some because of affordability, many times because of lack of knowledge among the physicians. And we don't have dedicated, hepatophysiology clinics or cardiomyopathy clinics. If you have a dedicated clinic in a hospital model or a tertiary model, actually you will then be very careful about systems of, checklists, and you will be sure that the patient is not missing out on any form of specific treatment and workout. So this is the most important thing. And of course, affordability in our Indian setting is important because we are from the government side. You know that this is required, but because the patient is not covered by insurance or not covered by, government scheme, some patients may still not get the costly drugs or ICDs when this is required.
Thank you. You echo the same concern which you have to working with the government or public sector, which we have. We are having a very operational this national program for prevention of non-communicable disease. That is there. The objective is to reduce mortality due to this non-communicable disease. We do have a screening pattern that means, but the challenge is that we cater to only 60% of OPD and around 40% of specialist care. 60% to the private sector and equal number goes to the private sector for this. We do have a screening program wherein we are targeting all the adults above 30 years for diabetes, hypertension, and through the CPAC form, community-based assessment form checklist. We are trying to screen the population for that. That's one thing which is there. It's still evolving, and I think coming days will be very good. But a similar kind of program we need to have for the private sector as well. Because in the government sector, we are catering to that. We do have a scheme which is going, evolving, maturing. We would be able to flag and say that this person is abnormal. At least that kind of screening is there. The person is abnormal, normal. But what kind of further investigation, other thing has to happen, that we have to connect to the up or the district hospital or the medical colleges, and that would be happening. In fact, if I like to add here, most of the work on hypertrophic cardiomyopathy has been done in the world in one institution, National Institute of Health, which is very well. All the patients of hypertrophic cardiomyopathy of North America, United States, other districts, Barry Mellon, which is a very big name, is the chief of cardiology. And the surgery for HCM is a very tricky surgery. Usually cardiac surgery cannot do it. So all the surgeries for HCM refer to it. So I don't say that, we should send them there. We should have centers, 3 or 4 centers in the country where HCM patients should be registered, and there should be some, important doctors, cardiologists who are interested in this field, handling them, and then do surveys and everything, because it is a very important disease. Unrecognized, underdiagnosed, poorly treated, with the problems, 25 milligrams of metformin not even twice a day. One of the challenges you require more education. Yes, you have just put a very hands on the pulse. Because one of the challenges that the system which we are having is having CPDS surgeons now. Because the super specialty fields and other things, you have to see like how we motivate people to join. It was very intensive, very challenging, require a lot of passion. Because cardiac surgery for diabetes, I think it takes a lot of time, a lot of passion. Because without a passion, you can't be having CPDS surgery. So that's a challenge which we are having. And Kandangalji, I will come to your journey because you have traversed as a patient. And now the challenge is that how can the patient education, how we can have a patient who has experienced this, he can act as a peer educator for others, so that the catastrophe which you have, the agony which you have, that can be minimized to other people. I slightly modified the question, but you can answer it.
So, let me just ask a simple question. How many of us know from Ramayana, who's wife of Ram? How many of you know? Just raise your hands. Yeah. No scoring, no scoring. Just raise your hand. Who's the wife of Ram? If you know it. Okay, I can see at least 25%, 30% hands. What is the distance between sun and earth? Anybody who knows that without looking at Google? So, 2 numbers or maybe 2 facts, but the difference here is what we remember and what we don't remember. We think of education as we will teach something by giving a flyer, sending an information, giving a definition, writing few bullet points, and people internalizing it. Not true. It's not patient education, it's patient learning. What they are learning and how they are learning. So if we make a difference in the learning process of patients, if we make it more relatable to them, if we make it more understandable to them, then patients can relate better, they can identify better, and they can present early in their course of action. The main challenge that we see here is we are not using patient storytelling as an instrument. And that is the most effective instrument we have seen. When we hear Ramayana, we remember that Ramayana for decades. We don't forget what happened in the Ramayana story. When we hear a patient saying, I collapsed one day and I was having these symptoms, we'll remember that for 10 years. Because we relate to it. And that's what real storytelling makes a difference. When we pick up people from real life who have experienced it, who have told other people that these are the signs and symptoms which I was facing, but I didn't realize. Or this is the mistake which I made. That's why I didn't went to the doctor for the next 5 years or 10 years. Then people know, oh, I have to be watchful. And that's exactly what patient education should start focusing on. That making these experiences more relatable, making these experiences more accessible to people so that people can know what real life experiences are and not just numbers on a pamphlet or a presentation.
As a follow-up question for the next segment also. Help in organizing and making patient support groups and network.
So there are two parts to it. One is intake process. That how do patients come into a community? Right now in our country, we do have mechanisms. So, for example, if we talk about national health policy or the NPNCTS policy, operational guidelines, it says patient support groups should be there. Go on the ground, nothing.
You have to see that how you can help them.
Now, how it can be helped? Just last week, when I was in Singapore, I was talking to NUHS. What they have done, the government hospitals have a linkage with patient support groups. So the referrals are happening that every patient which is diagnosed is actually referred to a patient support group, which is currently missing in our country. Once the patient comes in, then their experiential journey starts. So for example, at our foundation, we do something called as storytelling circles. What is storytelling circles? We get patients in the room and we let them talk to each other in a structured way. How it helps? It helps understand the journey from diagnosis to treatment to recovery. And people learn from each other and people know what I can miss or maybe what is normal, what is not normal, when is the emergency, what are the false alarms, what are the practical ways of doing things. And I think that's how we kind of, one part is building these communities. So if every hospital could have a referral mechanism that post-discharge, we are not, it's not just treatment, post-discharge journey has to be established. Because all these diseases which we are talking about in the cardiovascular, including HCM, these are chronic diseases, these are lifelong diseases. Once you have had it, you have to live with it for the next 20, 30, 50, 40 years.
Okay, thank you. That's quite elaborate because that makes the job for the Dr. Saxena and Dr. Kaul and Dr. Sanna easy. Because the follow-up questions I'm going to ask them. Because Professor Saxena, he has mentioned about this. What's diagnosed? What are the challenges in providing treatment and how you are managing the patients?
Yeah, so the main challenges are that we, till very recently, we did not have any specific therapy for HCL. So we were doing a lot of indirect management strategies, like for example, trying to reduce the hemodynamics, treat the hemodynamics, like beta blockers and calcium blockers and disopyramide. And if these were not effective in very severe symptomatic patients, we would try to reduce the size of the muscle by either treating muscle with alcohol, injecting alcohol so that some of the muscle dies, or surgical approach where some of the muscle is shaved off, thereby reducing obstruction. But these are all not very good therapies, and many patients get complications of surgery, as Professor Paul mentioned, that very few surgeons can really do it well. and septal reduction therapy have their own complications. So now we have a drug which directly addresses the pathophysiology of the HCM, which is called cardiac myosin inhibitors, and one of the drugs is mavacamten, which is recently been introduced. So it directly addresses the pathophysiology of the hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. That is, as Professor Paul mentioned, that there is excessive bridging of the active myosin in the muscle. So it inhibits that, and thereby it can reduce the contractility. It can improve symptoms. It can help the patients avoid septal reduction therapies. So there have been many trials, like Explorer trial was one thing which focused on clinical parameters, which showed that patients who were given mavacamten, they had better clinical outcomes in terms of symptoms and gradient reduction. And the Weller trial, which showed that the need for septal reduction therapy was significantly reduced in the patient. So as the recognition is improving, the clinical management of HCM is also undergoing a sea change, and we are getting a lot of new therapies available which will help our patients in the future. So I think that's a very important development.
Okay, thank you. Because Professor Paul, once again, because these patients require long-term treatment. How can a doctor ensure that this long-term treatment is there and the management of complications that have been associated with this long-term treatment that is being managed? None of the treatments which will help really cure it for HCM or HCM. And I've seen the natural history of in few patients of HOCM coming from 75%, 80% ejection fraction, becoming less, and finally landing up as diabetic cardiomyopathy. Even CRTs, I have two patients requiring CRT. It's a progressive. Basically, what I'm trying to mean is that it's a progressive disease. We don't have anything which can reverse it. We can prolong, we can reduce the symptoms, and follow-up is very, very important. The patient, we have patients on 200, 300 milligrams of betacolol and diazepam, 300 milligrams. They come for follow-up, do an echo, weightage is the same. Because when the patient comes discharged, he's in a metabolically state. Although the patient is doing much better, but there has to be something like an ambulatory monitoring of the patient lately. Otherwise, it's difficult. So you do provocative tests. So follow-up is extremely important, and the natural history of it is not very good. And younger patients have poorer bad natural history. How can we ensure proper follow-up? Because follow-up is quite common. Patient education, explain to them, spend some time with the patient and the family and tell them that this is a problem. Somebody says, "अरे तुम्हारा हार्ट बड़ा अच्छा चल रहा है, 75% चल रहा है, इसमें क्या परेशानी?" No, this is a harbinger of a problem. We need to not allow this. So this is more important is the era of this information explosion. There are a lot of claims, counter claims about other therapies. So in that case, Navacampin has come. Let's let it aside also, you have to be careful. It's not just giving 5 milligrams of Navacampin now. After 1 month, if the injection patient starts falling, stop it. You have to go back by 2.5 milligrams. It's all a complex game. That's why we have progressed a lot in the last 20, 30 years. These patients have become much better off, less symptomatic, but disease continues to progress.
Even the risk of sudden cardiac death needs to be reviewed every 6 months because something may happen in between which will change the risk. So we have to then consider.
I'm not sure that and it becomes very important because we have to generate some evidence, we have to talk about science only. Don't give a huge hope to the patient. It's a drug, it's going to help you, but you have to be careful, you have to be coming and doses have to be regulated. More technology to be done, what's happening to the patient. Immediately hold the monitor of HCM patient will show small numbers and large numbers. Topics and species of cases. Thank you, Professor Paul, for such an elaborate. At least that the message should be clear. That means the proper follow-up, patient care, patient education. That's a key for a proper follow-up and evidence-driven
treatment, whatever treatment plan which we are having. Professor Khanna, because one of the important things it requires multiple specialty, multiple disciplines. How we can ensure that timely management happens across all these to the patient.
So again, I'll put the same facts. One, that we have to, if the patient comes to, say, a tertiary care hospital or a good government hospital, right? It has to be, the patient has to be screened by multiple specialists, especially the cardiologist, the electrophysiologist, geneticists. They are very important. And then the follow-up is very important, and that can only be done if you have dedicated teams or a system, checklist which is there. Somebody who's got a cardiomyopathy, hypertrophic cardiomyopathy is like, it's a disease like diabetes, it's a disease where you have to live with it throughout your life. It requires regular checkups, it requires future therapy, it requires close monitoring and reassessment of risk and the progression of the disease. And not only this is a different disease like you sort of, in diabetes, you look for the family. Here you have to look for family history. You have to do genetic counseling, genetic screening, and pick up patients, not even patients, pick up susceptible individuals who could become patients and who could have certain cardiovascular. And then one of the most important things in this patient is to give them lifestyle modification advices, allow them what sort of activities to be done, what should be avoided. These are very important things, All deaths which we see in James, heart sudden heart attack or sudden cardiac arrest, many of these could also be having, genes which are responsible, or they may be having silent asymptomatic cardiomyopathy. So it's very important that this awareness is created among physicians. There are set protocols and checklists, and it should also be available to the patients at large. Especially as Mr. Ram Khandelwal said, patient story and patient getting, probably families learning through patient experiences is what is going to create this sort of a way around this country.
Okay, thank you for, at least you have made my job easier for summarizing all this thing. One of the important things which is coming is patient awareness, the capacities of our providers, and the multidisciplinary approach with the involvement of the patient network. But before closing, let me share that what we have been doing, because this long-term treatment is a catastrophe even for a patient. So what we are as a government and what we are doing, we are having Ayushman Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana. Though there would be operational challenges with that, but the benefit packages include the surgeries, the pacing of the heart, the myectomy and other procedures are there. We have to see that how we popularize it so that the benefit, rural benefit is the people. Second part is the Pradhan Mantri Bharatiya Jan Aushadhi Yojana, which is there, and the Amrit program for affordable treatment. How we see that, how we leverage, because long-term treatment is required. How we can leverage these schemes which are available so that we can at least help the patient and the patient support group also say that these are the schemes how we get connected and make these things. Besides that, in the government sector, we have been able to support the cardiac care units. We see that how we utilize it. It's not that only government can do things. You have to see that how collaboration can happen between the government and the private sector. The facilities which we are creating, in fact, critical care works also, we can see that how these facilities can be leveraged and how a private sector and the government can work in a hub and spoke model. That kind of models can also evolve. And thank you very much, Professor Gaul, Dr.
Thank you so much, sir, and thank you each and every panelist present here for this insightful discussion. Now, sir, I would just request Dr. Kaul, I would request to please stay back on the stage for a felicitation ceremony. I would request Dr. Madan Gopal to please felicitate our speakers, starting with Dr. Rupendra Kaul. Let's have a round of applause for their amazing insights. Dr. Anand Saxena. We can we give them a huge round of applause? Dr. Professor Narendra Nath Khalla. And Mr. Ram Khandelwal. I would request Dr. Naveen Mishra to please come on stage and felicitate Dr. Gopal for his amazing moderation. Let's capture this moment with a photograph.
For all the lovely contribution, I think they deserve another round of applause from you, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sure that all the knowledge that was shared on the stage was wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen.
And would like to thank our session partner, Bristol Mayor's Quip, for this. Now over to you, Kanish.
Thank you. Thank you. I think more importantly, we've had a wonderful session so far, but at the end of the day, our taste buds and our stomach also need some energy. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's take a short lunch break. This shall be only a 30-minute break. Sharp at 2 p.m., we will rejoin with the next leg of the event. So please be back and join us back at 2 p.m. because we are sure that you do not want to miss any of the brilliant knowledge sharing that is awaiting for you on the other side of the break starting at 2 p.m. Thank you very much. See you back at 2.